Chapter 132. Then do you want to try? The distance between them was a little too close. Ian was startled at first, then stunned. When he crashed into the limpid autumn water, he felt his cheeks quickly become hot. He wanted to retreat, but his shoulders were restrained and he couldn't move. He could only raise his head from his arms and refuse stutteringly. Try what? You've seen so much. Don't you want to try? He raised his eyebrows and leaned closer. His gaze fell on her lips, startling Hien. The man's facial features were more refined and heroic than when he was young, with a kind of cold indulgence. This kind of person, when he was calm and indifferent, was like a flower on a high mountain. When he lazily curved his lips and even his gaze became hot, it was irresistible. Hien said, I don't want to. Oh. He curved his lips and his tone became more dangerous. If you don't try, how will you know how it is? You don't have to try, Hien explained clumsily. Actually, you'll understand after seeing more. It's the same thing. It's just that the details are different, and some of them are not suitable for ordinary people. They're all drawn for fun. There's really no need to try, just read. Xiaoju fun? Hien. Some people might be thirsty for knowledge. Xiaoju's eyes became cold and his smile became more playful. He said lightly, since you're so experienced, then you must try. He was getting closer and closer, forcing Hien to retreat to the head of the bed. He tilted his head slightly and leaned over. His thin lips were about to fall on Hien's lips. Hien screamed, husband. This scream of husband was so loud that it shocked Xiaoju. After a moment he stopped and was only a little away from Hien. He raised his eyebrows. What are you doing? I'm still an unmarried girl, Hien pleaded softly. I'll get married in the future. It's not good for us to be like this. What's wrong with that? Xiaoju said calmly. You and I have already seen the picture together. Looking at the picture is one thing, but actually doing it is another. Hien begged. Governor, please spare me this time. I will never dare to ask you to look at the map with me again. She thought that Xiaoju's thoughts were really hard to fathom. Wasn't it just looking at a picture, and he wanted to make it real? Who would dare to look at pictures with him in the future? Something was going to happen. Xiaoju looked at her with a faint smile. Are you scared now? I'm scared. Hien was very sensible. I promise I won't ask the commander-in-chief to look at the map in the future. You mean, he said unhurriedly, you'll look for someone else? I won't look for others either. Hien immediately said. I won't look for myself either, really. She stared at him with her grape-like eyes, clear and bright, as if she was a student caught red-handed by her teacher. Xiaoju suddenly felt a little puzzled. He felt that his actions were very strange. Hien could look at whatever she wanted. What did it have to do with him? Just because she called him father? Did he have to worry about everything, no matter how big or small, like raising a daughter? But then again, how did her father raise his daughter? How could he raise such a strange person who did not know what shame was? He suddenly released Hien's hand and glanced at the painting on the wall. It was difficult for Cui Yuji to be so meticulous. He even thought of the interesting things that happened last night for his nephew. However, there was really no use for it. He casually pulled the satin cloth from the small table and covered the picture on the wall. Then he inserted 2 silver needles into the wall and firmly nailed the satin cloth. At this point, Hien finally understood. It turned out that Xiaoju hated looking at this painting. Thinking about it, second young Master Zhao's eyes were as pure as ice and pure as jade. This kind of filthy painting would definitely dirty his eyes. She was really particular. After he finished all this, he got up and walked to the side of the room. He found a mattress from the short yellow wooden cabinet and laid it on the soft bed in front of the window. The soft bed was for guests to sit in front of the window and enjoy the beautiful scenery outside while eating snacks and tea. Hien saw this and was stunned for a moment. He asked, Commander-in-Chief, are you sleeping here tonight? Otherwise. Hien hesitated. Actually, you can sleep on the bed with me. Xiaoju stopped arranging the mattress and looked at him. He said coldly, I think you are very brave. No, I know what you are worried about, Hien said. We only need 2 mattresses. When I was in Liangzhou, I also slept in a large shared bed. It was not a big deal for more than 10 people to sleep in one bed. Moreover, I believe in your character. You will not tarnish my reputation. Xiaoju sneered. But I don't believe in your character. I am afraid that you will tarnish my reputation. Yen. She did not know how to respond. She saw Xiaoju lay down after arranging the mattress. She thought for a moment, blew out the lamp, and lay down as well. In the room, only the moonlight outside the window shone on the floor in front of the table. It was covered with a layer of silver frost. When they were young in the Xianchang mansion, the two of them slept in the same room. They were quite far apart. He Yen slept alone in the same room because he Yuanliang had specially informed Shirbao. Now that he was sleeping in the same room as Xiaoju, he felt a little like he did in the past. She lay flat. The mattress under her was soft and warm. He Yen asked, "Are you asleep?" Xiaoju did not answer. He Yen continued, "I don't think so." "They are. Young master, let's talk." Xiaoju still ignored her. "Why did we come to Jiang?" She only knew that they came to Jiang to accompany Xiaoju. However, she did not know what they were going to do. In the dark night, Xiaoju's voice sounded. "We are looking for someone." He Yen was stunned. He did not expect Xiaoju to answer. He asked, "Who are you looking for?" "Chaianshi." "Who is Chaianshi?" The room was silent for a moment. Then Xiaoju said, "He is my father's subordinate." "Xiao Zhongwu's subordinate?" He Yen was stunned. During the Battle of Mingshui, Xiao Zhongwu's most trusted subordinates died in battle. Since Xiaoju said that he was a subordinate, it sounded like he was a very trusted person. Could this person still be alive and in Jiang? Jiang was the territory of the vassals. There were very few people from the Central Plains who came here. Even if there were, they would just pass by and would not stay for long. Chaianshi looked like he was hiding from someone in Jiang. Could it be that he was hiding from Xiaoju? However, why would he hide from Xiaoju? Xiaoju was Xiao Zhongwu's son. He should be loyal to him. Perhaps a general's mind was especially sensitive in this aspect. Ian immediately thought of something. Could it be that there was something wrong with Xiao Zhongwu's death during the battle? After all, Xiao Zhongwu's defeat during the Battle of Mingshui was too tragic. Everyone said that he was headstrong and self-opinionated. However, based on Xiao Zhongwu's past achievements, he was not a headstrong person. Perhaps Xiaoju came here because of what happened back then. The person who knew about it was no longer around. However, Chaianshi was still alive. It was indeed suspicious. He thought for a moment and said, "We will definitely find this person." In the dark night, he seemed to hear Xiaoju chuckle. He asked, "Why did you come to Jiang?" "Me?" Yen was puzzled. "Didn't you ask me to come?" Xiaoju snorted and said, "Even if I didn't ask you to come, you would still find a way to follow me, wouldn't you?" Yan's heart skipped a beat. This person was too sensitive. She indeed had an ulterior motive. She still hoped to find Lu Buang in Jiang. However, she would not say this to Xiaoju. "You're too suspicious." Yan made up a story. "This time, I came purely for you. As long as you need me, I will not hesitate to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of fire." Xiaoju was silent for a moment and said, "Flattery." Yan said, "What else can you say other than flattery?" "Big words." "What else?" "Falling from the sky." "What else?" "Deceiving the heavens and concealing the earth." Yan was speechless. She said, "Young master, do you know that you are really childish now?" Xiaoju said, "Sleep." He no longer paid attention to her. The spring night was still chilly. For some reason, Hien did not feel cold, perhaps because there was someone by his side tonight. He happily got into bed. The bed was warm, and he fell asleep in an instant. The next day, when Hien woke up, Xiaoju was no longer in the room. She was stunned for a moment. She guessed that the sky had just brightened, but Xiaoju had actually woken up earlier than her. Hien stood up, hurriedly washed up, and put on an outer robe. At a glance, he saw Xiaoju sitting on the stone bench in the courtyard. A dirty wild cat was lying on the stone table in front of him, and it was eating the food in his hand. Hien walked closer, and saw that he had taken a plate of pastries from somewhere. He was pinching them into small pieces, and feeding them to the wild cat in front of him. When the wild cat saw that someone had come, all of its fur stood up. It did not know which pond it had rolled in, but its fur was stained with dirty water, and it had congealed into small pieces. Why is there a cat here? Yan asked. He wanted to touch it, but the cat immediately bared its teeth. Yan retracted his hand and said, "It's quite fierce." Xiaoju glanced at her and said, "I picked it up." The young man's fingers were long and slender, and he was very patient as he broke the pastries into small pieces. The cat was probably very good at judging people's looks. It was very gentle toward Xiaoju, and it was eating while softly calling out Mimi. Needless to say, it was quite beautiful. Yan could not help but ask, "Young master, don't you love cleanliness the most?" Few when he was with her, he despised her in every way, and even pulled up his sleeves to wipe the dust off. Why, when he was with a dirty wild cat, he became generous? It depends on the situation. Xiaoju said slowly. Yan thought to himself, what did he mean by depending on the situation? Did he mean that she was worse than a cat? As he was thinking, Xiaoju finished feeding the cat the last piece. She patted the cat's head, and the cat was smart. It arched its body, jumped up the wall, and disappeared in a flash. Yan stared blankly. At this time, Cui Jiao's voice sounded from outside. "Young master, young mistress, the kitchen has sent breakfast." Yan felt hungry and said, "Let's go and eat something." Xiaoju washed her hands and followed Yan into the house. She saw Lin Shuanghe take out the silver needles from the food and said, "Eat it. I've tested it. It's not poisonous." After saying that, he whispered angrily, "The difference between people is too big. Why can't we eat as much?" He was now housekeeper Lin, but he could not eat with Xiaoju and Yan. He had to eat with Qi Wu and Fei Nu. He could not even taste it in case someone found out. Xiaoju said, "Scram." Lin Shuanghe scrammed and left. Hong Qiao stood behind Yan. Yan waved his hand and said, "Go and eat with Qi Wu and the others. Young master and I don't like to be served." "I'll do it." Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao were stunned. They looked at Xiaoju. Seeing that Xiaoju did not say anything, Cui Jiao said, "This servant understands." She pulled Hong Qiao and left. When they reached the door, Hong Qiao asked hesitantly, "Cui Jiao, is it good for us to leave like this? Young mistress and young master don't usually want us to serve them. Are they not satisfied with us?" "That's not it." Cui Jiao was clever and said, "Perhaps they are from the capital and are different from Jiang. Moreover, I heard that young mistress and young master are newly married. They probably want to serve young master personally. This is called fun." At this moment, young mistress, who was supposed to personally serve young master, was eating a plum blossom bun with relish. The last time he ate so well was when he pretended to be his nephew and accompanied Xiaoju to Liangzhou City. However, at that time the food was only the specialty of the inn. This time it was different. Cui Yuji's status in Jiang was not low. Moreover, he was his nephew whom he had not seen for a long time. Therefore he treated him with extra care. It was early in the morning. Look at the food on the table. There were assorted grilled meat, shisha milk, pheasant slices soup, fish maw stewed with ham, bird's nest shredded chicken soup. "This morning's food is too oily," Yan said as he took a bite of the 8-treasure wild duck. Xiaoju endured it and finally could not help but say, "Did I not feed you enough?" Yan's mouth was full. Huh. He looked away in disgust. "Do you have to eat like a reincarnated hungry ghost? But don't you think it's delicious?" Yan swallowed the food in his mouth. Xiaoju said mockingly, "Is that all you have? You're a young master and a commander-in-chief. You live like a prince. Of course, you've seen the world and don't think it's a big deal. We're soldiers. It's good enough that we can eat until we're full. How can you not say that it's good?" Yan muttered. "You're a well-fed man and you don't know the suffering of a hungry man." He choked and gave up on reasoning with Yan. He said lazily, "Whatever." Yan looked at Xiaoju as he ate. He was amazed by his elegant table manners. Logically speaking, people like them who had been in the military camp for many years did not care about such etiquette. It did not matter if they were young masters or young masters in the past. When Yan was eldest young master he did pay attention to his manners. However, when he was in a real battle, he could finish a biscuit in 2 or 3 bites and then get up to work. Who would care about his manners? He Yin did not believe that Xiao Ju had never behaved like that before. However, after going through such a difficult time, he was able to return to being the second young master of the Xiao family. This was not something an ordinary person could do. At least, she had long forgotten how to be a young master. After the meal, Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao came over to help He Yin dress up. Cui Yuji was going to hold a banquet in his residence at noon. He had also invited many famous nobles in Jiang City. The purpose of this banquet was to make Xiao Ju proud. Therefore, he could not be careless. Xiao Ju went out to look for Lin Shuanghe. He Yin sat in front of the dressing mirror. Hong Qiao took out the mermaid gauze from the box and asked He Yin, "Madam, do you want to wear this today?" He Yin thought for a moment. There were many people coming today. It would be safer to wear the most expensive one. He nodded and said, "Okay." The two maidservants began to get busy. He Yin was usually the most impatient to do these kinds of things. Sometimes, he even felt that doing such delicate work for a woman was more tiring than doing it for a man. Just combing her hair, putting on makeup, choosing jewelry and shoes, and even tucking her hair in to make it look cute was not an easy task. As she combed her hair, she fell asleep. He Yin was woken up by Hong Qiao. Hong Qiao said, "Madam?" He Yin opened his eyes and asked in a daze, "Done?" "Done." Cui Jiao smiled at the side. Her eyes were filled with amazement. "Madam, you look really good." He Yin said, "Thank you." She raised her head to look at herself in the mirror, and was stunned for a moment. Her previous female clothing was still elegant and simple. However, this mermaid gauze could be considered charming and gorgeous. Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao must have put in a lot of effort today. They did not even dare to make a mistake in their makeup. He Yin looked at her unfamiliar self in the mirror, and was slightly absent-minded. This time, she did not even look like the real lady he. Cui Jiao smiled and pushed the door open, saying, "Young master is next door. This servant will call young master over to take a look." He Yin said, "No." Before he could finish the word must, Cui Jiao left happily. He Yin stood up and suddenly hesitated. She was still thinking about how to face Xiao Ju in a more natural manner when she heard a casual voice behind her. "Done?" He Yin looked back. The young girl was thinking about something. Her clear eyes were a little confused, and her expression was a little hazy. She was originally beautiful and delicate. Originally, the heroic spirit between her eyebrows was deliberately covered by makeup, making her appear pure and moving. Her face was charming and her black hair was simply tied up, obediently hanging on her shoulders. Her body looked very thin and petite. Her pale white silk embroidered dress made her look even more graceful. The dress hid a very faint hidden flower. When the sun shone through, it looked like the scales of a mermaid, glowing with a faint blue-purple gold powder. Her entire being was enveloped in a layer of magnificent colors, as if she was a legendary mermaid who had just climbed onto the shore and had just arrived in the mortal world. Xiao Ju's gaze paused. Lin Shuanghe's voice came from behind. "I want to see what a dress that costs 100 gold coins looks like. Let me see, let me see." His noise suddenly disappeared when he saw He Yin. Only amazement remained in his eyes. Qi Wu and Fei Nu, who had followed closely behind, also saw. Fei Nu was fine, but Qi Wu seemed to have suffered a huge blow. This person can actually be so beautiful when dressed as a woman? They couldn't tell that he was a man at all. It was too scary. He Yin was at a loss as to what to do. He felt like he had become a monkey on the stage for everyone to admire. He grabbed the corner of his clothes and said pitifully, "Isn't this a little too much? Wasn't it just attending a banquet? Was there a need to dress up like this? Wasn't it too grand?" It would have been better if she didn't make this expression. Once she did this, her eyebrows seemed to frown, and she suddenly looked delicate and pitiful. Xiao Ju said indescribably, "Don't talk with this expression." But. Lin Shuanghe became excited. "This is great. It's just right. This dress that costs 100 gold coins is indeed a dress that costs 100 gold coins. It's really extraordinary. This money was well spent." Cui Jiao was happy. "Isn't that right, madam? This servant said that it's really beautiful." When He Yin was a man, he was often praised as mighty, brave, and boundlessly handsome. He had never experienced being praised for his looks as a woman, so he was a bit shy. For a moment he didn't know how to respond, so he cupped his fists and said loudly, "You flatter me." Xiaoju, Lin Shuanghe. The rest of the people, Lin Shuanghe said. "It's beautiful, but madam, sometimes you don't have to be so forthright." Xiaoju sneered. "You should speak with that expression just now. Otherwise I might forget that you're actually a woman." Yan. All right, he forgot himself for a moment. At noon the entire Chui residence became lively. Carriages continuously stopped at the entrance of the Chui residence. Madams, young misses, young masters, and old masters all entered the residence. Jiang was a territory belonging to a vassal. The current princess Mu Hongjin grew up together with Cui Yuji. Cui Yuji was Mu Hongjin's confidant, and was also the first lieutenant of Jiang. Everyone had to give him face. When they heard that Cui Yuji had found his long-lost nephew, they specially prepared a banquet for his return. Everyone wanted to take a look. The Chui residence was huge. There was a lake at the back of the residence. Jiang had a lot of water, and the water was gentle. In the middle of the lake, there was a long pavilion in the middle of the lake. Today's banquet was held in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. In the pavilion, the servants had already prepared a few long and short tables. The banquet on the tables was also very sumptuous. Some of the distinguished guests had already taken their seats. Cui Yuji, the master of the residence, had yet to leave the residence. He didn't have a wife and only had 4 concubines. Therefore, the only one who helped to greet the guests was the old housekeeper, Zhong Fu. Next to a woman on the right side of the pavilion, sat a young girl dressed in pink. This young girl was delicate and charming. Her skin was slightly darker, so she had put on more makeup. This made her look less barbaric and more melancholy. She frowned impatiently and asked, "It's already so late. Why aren't young Master Qiao and his wife here yet? What's the hurry?" The woman next to her, who was probably her mother, smiled and comforted her. "The banquet hasn't started yet. Moreover, Lord Chui hasn't arrived yet. How can young Master Qiao show himself first? Min'er, are you hungry?" Yen Min'er, who was the young girl dressed in pink, frowned and said, "I'm not hungry. It's natural for us to wait for Cui Zhongqi. However, I heard that Cui Zhongqi's nephew was adopted by a merchant after he left Jiang City. Now he's just a merchant. How can a merchant who stinks of money be worthy of our bitter wait? Does he really think he's a big shot?" After all, the noble families in Jiang all knew that Qiao Huanqing was a merchant. Although they came to the banquet today because of Cui Yuezhi, they didn't think highly of Qiao Huanqing in private. They just wouldn't say it out loud like Yan Min. "Shoo." Madame Yan hurriedly covered her mouth. "Don't talk nonsense. No matter what, he's still Lord Cui's nephew. I think he's spoiling you too much. That's why you're so lawless. Didn't you see that Lord Cui set up a banquet today to welcome young Master Qiao? Do you think Lord Cui will be happy if you say that young Master Qiao is bad?" "So what?" Yen Min'er said disdainfully. "Lord Cui and my father are friends. He won't blame me." "Oh, you." Madame Yen wanted to stop her beloved daughter from speaking without thinking, but she couldn't bear to really scold her. Yen Min'er's beautiful eyes turned. She thought for a while and said disapprovingly, "I think that maybe he hasn't seen such a big event before. He's hiding somewhere and doesn't dare to come out. He's waiting for Cui Zhongqi to help lead the way." Chapter 133. Yen Min. And Madame Yan's conversation was overheard by a lady dressed in green. This lady was slightly younger than Yen Min, and was more beautiful and slender. She asked, "I heard that young Master Qiao's wife is a famous talented lady in Hu province. Is she pretty?" Yen Min smiled and said ambiguously, "Even if she's a famous talented lady, she can't compare to Jiang's Xiao." Ling Xiao was the beloved daughter of Ling Dianyi from the Imperial Residence's record office. She could compose poems at the age of 5, and was famous in Jiang at the age of 7. She was proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was delicate and beautiful. She was outstanding in Jiang City, where most women were beautiful and bold. When she heard that there was another talented lady from Hu province, she wanted to compete with her. When another lady heard this, she covered her mouth and sneered. "Ah Xiao, you don't have to compare yourself to a merchant's wife. You don't have to lower yourself. Maybe the title of a talented lady is just a lie. You're just putting on a golden coat for yourself. Ling Xiu laughed too. If young Master Qiao really stays in Jiang, he won't be a merchant in the future. A merchant is a merchant. The stench of money is in his bones. It's not something that can be covered by a change of clothes. Yan Min'er's tone was scornful. He's not elegant after all. The ladies laughed together. At this moment someone said, Cui Zhongqi is here. Everyone looked up and saw a middle-aged man walking over from the end of the pavilion by the lake. This man was round and had a broad body. He looked simple and honest, and his smile was amiable, like the Maitreya Buddha. He wore a black martial attire, and was in high spirits. When he reached the entrance of the pavilion, he handed the long spear in his hand to his subordinate, and said with a smile, Everyone is here. Everyone quickly stood up and greeted Cui Yuezhi. In Jiang, Cui Yuezhi was second only to one person. Therefore, everyone in the imperial residence had to give him face. Cui Yuezhi turned around and asked Zhong Fu, Are Huanqing and the rest here? I've sent someone to invite them. Zhong Fu smiled. They should be here soon. Yesterday, Cui Yuezhi had a discussion with the princess in the imperial residence. He accidentally drank a few cups and stayed in the imperial residence. This morning he had a quarrel with the group of stubborn old men. He had not seen his nephew until now. He touched his chin and said, I wonder how my nephew looks like? Does he look like Big Brother? How similar are you to me? Zhong Fu wanted to say something but stopped himself. To be honest, apart from his gender, that young Master Qiao had nothing in common with the Cui family. I heard that the child was raised in a merchant's family. Cui Yuezhi was a little worried. Although I don't mind these things, the nobles in the city value status the most. I just hope that they don't belittle themselves. Zhong Fu still wanted to say something, but at the end of the pavilion, a servant of the Cui family came over and said, Young Master Qiao, Madam Qiao has arrived. Everyone subconsciously looked up. At the end of the pavilion, beside the lake, two people walked side by side. It was a man and a woman. Both of them were very young. The man was very tall and his body was as straight as jade. He wore a dark green embroidered robe with black and gold pythons. He was very elegant. His fine black hair was tied up with a green jade hairpin. His eyes were exquisite and bright. The woman standing beside him had a bright smile on her face. She was bright and adorable. It was unknown what material her clothes were made of. At first, it looked like an ordinary plain white, but as she walked, it glowed with shades of blue, purple, and gold. It was dreamy and very moving. The two of them were both outstanding in appearance and bearing, and they were strangely compatible. When they stood together, it was an indescribable feeling of being a perfect match. For a moment, everyone in the pavilion was stunned. Was this a merchant who was reeking of money? Could a merchant have such extraordinary charm? Cui Yuezhi was also stunned. Was this his elder brother's son? His elder brother's appearance was 70% similar to his. Not to mention handsome, just the word slender, was difficult to achieve. This was a little too good-looking. Yan Min'er was stunned. Suddenly, her face became extremely ugly. She knew these two people. This woman was the one who embarrassed her in the embroidery workshop that day. This man was the one who mocked her for her dark skin. After she returned to the residence, she couldn't take it lying down. She didn't expect that these two people were the nephew and niece-in-law that Cui Yuezhi found. She was so angry that she wanted to vomit blood. At the side, Ling Xiu's gaze fell on Xiaoju. She was a little dazed. She only muttered, There's actually such a good-looking man in this world. Jiang was different from Shuajing. The female lead was beautiful and bold, while the male lead was masculine and brave. It was probably because things were rare that was precious. Just like how a talented woman like Ling Xiu was highly sought after in Jiang, a handsome, noble, and elegant man like Xiaoju was really rare. All the unmarried women at the banquet stared at him like wolves staring at meat. Ian also noticed these covetous gazes. He secretly cursed in his heart. Xiaoju's face really attracted bees and butterflies wherever he went. Lin Shuanghe followed behind the two of them. At first, everyone thought that he was Xiaoju's relative or friend. When they found out that he was the housekeeper, they were also shocked. They probably didn't expect that the conditions to be a housekeeper in Huzhou would be so harsh. Cui Yuezhi arranged for Xiaoju and Hiyen to sit on the right side of his long seat. Huanqing. Cui Yuezhi looked at him with a smile. I really didn't expect you to be so good-looking. He really made the Cui family proud. In Jiang City, no one was more outstanding than the young man in front of him. When Cui Yuezhi was young, he was ridiculed behind his back for being a round ball. He was vulgar and fat. Before Qiao Huanqing returned, he heard rumors in Jiang City and was waiting to see another little fat ball. Who knew? He really made them proud. The Cui family wiped away their shame. Good. Xiaoju nodded calmly. Cui Yuezhi's gaze fell on Hiyen again. He smiled and said, Niece-in-law looks young too. How old are you this year? Hiyen said, almost 17. 17 is good. The more Cui Yuezhi looked at Hiyen, the more satisfied he was. His nephew and niece-in-law were both good-looking. Their children in the future would be even more good-looking. The Cui family's bloodline would definitely be stronger with each generation. When he thought of this, he felt very gratified. He even wanted to go to the ancestral hall and burn 2 sticks of incense for his elder brother. Today's banquet in the middle of the lake is specially held to welcome the two of you. Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, Do you think it's all right? Xiaoju said, It's very good. Thank you, uncle. The word uncle immediately pleased Cui Yuezhi. He smiled so widely that his face was about to burst. He said to the crowd, As you can see, this is the only son of my deceased elder brother. He's my nephew. The guests immediately raised their cups and complimented Cui Yuezhi with things like extraordinary appearance and profound elegance. They also congratulated Cui Yuezhi for reuniting with his family and so on. Cui Yuezhi was even happier. He ordered the servants to serve the dishes and the banquet began. There was no custom in Jiang for men and women to sit at separate tables. The long tables were arranged according to their gender. Cui Yuezhi asked Xiaoju in detail about the past few years. As they talked, the topic shifted to Hiyen. I heard that my nephew and niece-in-law just got married not long ago. We got married in October last year in Hu District, Xiaoju said calmly. Less than half a year ago. Cui Yuezhi replied with an oh. He said regretfully, It's a pity that I didn't see it with my own eyes. He patted Xiaoju's shoulder. If I could see you get married with my own eyes, I would die without regrets. What does your family do? Cui Yuezhi asked. Hu District is too far from Jiang. It's not easy to find out about many things. Hiyen answered according to what he had said before. I'm only from an ordinary family. Thank you for thinking so highly of me, young master. An ordinary family? Everyone had different expressions on their faces. This was a commoner's family. The world always thought that although Qiao Huanqing was born into a merchant family, he was still considered rich. Money could make the devil turn millstones. Moreover, he was so outstanding. If he married the daughter of a minor official, it would be more than enough. However, he married Wen Yuyan, who was from an ordinary family, who had neither money nor power. Why? If he liked Wen Yuyan's beauty, he could have just asked her to be his concubine. Why did she have to be his wife? The young girl's gazes towards Hiyen immediately carried traces of envy and jealousy. Ling Xiu's gaze shifted slightly and landed on Xiaoju's face. The young man was handsome to begin with. At this moment he was sitting lazily. However, due to his occasional indifference, he looked even more attractive. He was comparable to all the men in Jiang. She looked at Hiyen again. She was only the daughter of an ordinary family. How could she be compared to her in terms of appearance and status? A trace of unwillingness surfaced in her heart. Wen Yuyan was not worthy of Qiao Huanqing. She was the only one who deserved to stand side by side with Qiao Huanqing. She stood up and said softly, Today Lord Cui has found his family. This is a good thing worth celebrating. I'm not talented, but I'm willing to play a song for Lord Cui to congratulate you. After she finished speaking, her gaze swept past Xiaoju, and she revealed a shy smile. The young men in the banquet were overjoyed when they heard this. They stared at Ling Xiu with sparkling eyes. Jiang City's young ladies had always been bold and confident. If they had outstanding talent, it would not be embarrassing to show it in front of everyone. However, Ling Xiu was different from the others. She did not like to take the initiative to show off. Even at a banquet, she would use all sorts of excuses, and would only agree when she had no choice. However, it was the first time that she took the initiative like today. Moreover, it was her best zither skill. This made everyone look forward to it. Cui Yuezhi was also very happy. He waved his hand and said, "Good. Xiao, you've opened our eyes today. If you play well, Uncle will give you a big gift." Lord Ling and Madam Ling smiled. They were already used to such glorious things. After all, the entire Jiang city knew that Ling Xiu was unparalleled in talent and beauty. The servant quickly brought a zither. This zither was also emerald in color. It was as green as the grass and trees in spring. She was also wearing a light green gauze dress. She really looked like a charming spirit in spring. Her slender fingers, bathed in incense, gently plucked the zither strings. She was playing late spring. The spring breeze blew the horsewooling. In the warm West Lake in March, the strings touched the water and the orioles in the flower market. I don't know if the music will reach here. She frowns as she passes the mountains. Her hair is piled up in the willows. The sound of the zither was pleasing to the ear. It brushed past people's ears, making them feel intoxicated. Ian was also the same. He only felt that this young lady's hands were really skillful. Compared to his own movements of plucking the zither, if he was not careful, he could pluck the strings and break them, not to mention playing a complete song. She was really amazing. She was intoxicated by the music. When she glanced over, she saw that Xiao Ju was unmoved. He only lowered his head and drank his tea. She could not help but touch him and whispered, "Why aren't you listening?" Xiao Ju replied, "I'm listening." "Then why don't you look like it's very nice to listen to?" "What do you mean by very nice to listen to?" Yan pointed to the other side with his mouth. Like them, the young men present, and even some of the older young masters, were staring at Ling Xiu in a daze. It was as if they were drowning in the sound of the zither. Their eyes were flashing with admiration. Xiao Ju retracted his gaze and said coldly, "Boring. You're really hard to please." Yan muttered softly, "I think it's very nice to listen to. She's also very pretty. If I can get to know such a girl, I'll definitely be very happy." "Very happy?" Xiao Ju suddenly smiled. He looked at him and said with interest, "I hope you'll be as happy from now on." Ian did not understand what he meant. He only said, "Of course I'll be happy from now on." While they were talking, Ling Xiu had finished her song. She looked at Xiao Ju and saw that Xiao Ju was talking to Yan with a smile. He seemed to be teasing her. Ling Xiu saw this scene and her heart sank. She was even more dissatisfied. She stood up and the people around her praised her. Cui Yuezhi also smiled and said, "Xiu, your zither song lingers on. But the sound still lingers in my ears 9 days. No one would deny her zither music." Ling Xiu looked at Xiao Ju again, but he lowered his head and drank his tea. He did not even look at her. Instead, when Yu Yan beside him looked at her with a smile, as if he was mocking her. Ling Xiu's smile was a little stiff. After a while, she said humbly, "Xiu doesn't dare to show off in front of an expert. I heard that Madame Qiao from Huzhou is a famous talented woman. Her zither skills are superb. Since we're fated to be here today, can you let Xiu experience it?" After saying that, she looked at Yan with anticipation. Let everyone see how exquisite Madame's zither skills are. Yan was watching happily. When he heard that, he was stunned. Why was she suddenly mentioned? When Yan's zither skills were superb? Was that so? Why didn't she know? Yan looked at Lin Shuanghe for help. This was her husband. Lin Shuanghe turned his head away as if nothing had happened. He pretended to talk to the people around him. He did not intend to help her. "I think that's not necessary," Yan said. "Miss Xiu's zither skills are already very good. I don't need to do anything more." "How can you say that it's unnecessary?" Ling Xiu looked at Yan with sincerity. "Xiu really wants to listen to Madame's zither music." Yan was speechless. Her zither music? Her zither music could drive away evil spirits and calm the house. It was not for appreciation. When Ling Xiu saw Yan's awkward expression, she could not help but feel proud. She thought that the rumors about Wen Yuyan's talents were probably just a pretense. If she could make a fool of herself in front of everyone today, she would become the joke of Jiang City. Yan Min'er, who had always been at odds with Ling Xiu, could not help but gloat when she saw this scene. Previously at the embroidery workshop, although it was Xiao Ju who said those sarcastic words, Yan Min'er blamed He Yan for it. A woman who was admired by such an outstanding man was always particularly eye-catching. Especially when she did not look special. She made people feel that she did not live up to her reputation. He Yan looked at Xiao Ju who was beside him. Xiao Ju was drinking tea leisurely with a calm expression. No wonder, he said. I hope you can be as happy from now on. Did he already guess that this would happen? How did he know? This kind of strange thought was unpredictable. How could Xiao Ju see through it? Did she have the ability to read minds? He Yan muttered in his heart. He reached under the table and secretly tugged at Xiao Ju's sleeve. He whispered, Can you help me? Xiao Ju said calmly. Didn't you learn it before? I didn't learn it, He Yan said. Lin Shuanghe taught me before. He even said that I was already very good. But when I heard this girl play just now, I feel that my playing is not quite right. His words were tactful, but in fact it was not just not quite right. It was ridiculously wrong. You don't know anything about zither, chess, calligraphy, or painting, he said. Other than swindling, what else do you know? He Yan said hesitantly. Breaking a boulder on my chest? But she couldn't just show others how to break a boulder on her chest. Xiao Ju, if I expose myself, we're all finished. Help me, He Yan pleaded. Commander-in-Chief, Young Master, Second Young Master Xiao, husband. Xiao Ju was obviously disgusted by this husband. He said, Speak properly. He Yan. Then I'll take it that you agree. The two of them spoke very softly. In the eyes of the crowd, He Yan seemed to be acting spoiled to Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju was very indulgent. Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, What? Does Yu Yan not want to play the zither? To be honest, after we got married, I made a promise with my wife. My wife's zither skills are superb, and she can only play for me. Xiao Ju said calmly. So today, I'm afraid I can't do as you wish. Everyone was stunned. He Yan was also stunned. He never thought that Xiao Ju would use this reason. But thinking about it, this reason was very good. After all, if he used other reasons once, there would be a next time. This reason would also prevent the next time. After all, there was no reason to break a promise. Ling Xiu's expression was stiff. She looked at the young lady sitting beside the young man. In the end, she couldn't take it anymore. She smiled and said, But today is the day that young master and Master Cui are reunited. There are so many people here, it's not a big deal to break the promise once. My promise with my wife cannot be changed. Xiao Ju looked at her calmly. You must listen. I can do it for you. At the end of the sentence, his tone became cold. He was already impatient. Ling Xiu was also shocked by his coldness. For a moment, she didn't dare to speak. Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, Huanqing also knows how to play the zither? I only know a little. Then I want to hear Huanqing play the zither today. Cui Yuezhi laughed loudly. My Cui family has never produced such an elegant person. Zhong Fu, wipe the zither again. No need. Xiao Ju said. Butler Lin, bring the evening fragrance zither. Xiao Ju was very particular about the things he used. He Yan meant that he knew. But in the eyes of those who didn't know, especially Ling Xiu, it was as if Xiao Ju didn't want to use the same zither as her because he didn't like her. She couldn't help but bite her lips. She reluctantly returned to her seat. Lin Shuanghe quickly brought over Xiao Ju's evening fragrance zither. He Yan still remembered this evening fragrance zither. Before she went to the Liangzhou guards to pretend to be Cheng Li Su, she was drunk and crushed this zither. Xiao Ju even brought it to Liangzhou to get it repaired. Just by looking at it, she knew that it was very expensive. Fortunately, Xiao Ju didn't ask her to pay for it. Otherwise, she wouldn't be able to pay it back even if she sold herself. She vaguely remembered that she had heard Xiao Ju play the zither. But she was half drunk and her memory was blurry. Now that she saw this zither, the memories of her drunken stupor flooded her mind. The man sat in front of the zither, burning incense and bathing his hands. Unlike Ling Xiu's deliberate playing, he was much more lazy and casual. His movements were very natural. If he wasn't someone who played the zither for a long time, he wouldn't be able to do it so smoothly. At a certain moment, Hien seemed to have seen the dissolute youth lying on the loquat tree in the Xianchang dojo. But he had grown up. The zither strings were plucked. His hands were slender and had distinct joints. They were very good-looking. When they fell on the zither strings, a pleasant sound flowed out. This sound was different from the late spring that Ling Xiu had just played. It was different from the cheerful late spring. It was quiet with a hint of melancholy, like a river illuminated by the bright moon, flowing into the distance. He was playing River Moon. This song was very difficult and tested one's zither skills. Ian had heard someone play it before. It was her master, Lu Buwang. However, when Lu Buwang played it, he was more reminiscing or lost. The feeling of Xiaoju playing it was different from that of Lu Buwang. When a handsome man did elegant things, he was always particularly eye-catching. Even Ling Xiu, who had just been frightened by Xiaoju, or Yan Min who had been mocked by Xiaoju before, and even more people, couldn't help but be immersed in his music at this moment. Hien was no exception. When he played the zither, his disc wing-like eyelashes drooped down, covering the indifference in his eyes, leaving only gentleness. His facial features were excessively handsome, and his thin lips were slightly pursed, making him look restrained and charming. Hien thought that it was indeed difficult to see someone more outstanding and good-looking than him in this world. When the song ended, Xiaoju withdrew his hands. Everyone stared at him, and was silent for a moment. If it weren't for his River Moon, Ling Xiu's late spring should be very outstanding. But after comparison, Ling Xiu's zither skills seemed mediocre and not so amazing. Both men and women stared at Xiaoju, and there was only one confusion in their hearts at this moment. Wasn't it said that Xiao Huanqing, who came from Huzhou, was adopted by a merchant's family? But now it seemed that the information was wrong. Such a person didn't seem to be raised by a merchant's family. Cui Yueji's face became even more proud. The more he looked at Xiaoju, the more satisfied he was. He laughed and said, "Huanqing, your song stunned us all. Previously, Her Highness always said that Xiu's zither skills were the best in Jiang City. The next time I bring you to the prince's mansion, Her Highness will definitely praise you if she hears your music." When everyone heard this, they all had different thoughts. Since Cui Yueji mentioned the princess, it meant that he wanted to bring Qiao Huanqing into the prince's mansion. If that was the case, they couldn't treat him as an ordinary merchant. Xiaoju smiled slightly and glanced at Hien with his deep eyes. He said calmly, "I've embarrassed myself. To be honest, my zither skills are not even 1/10 of Madame's." "Really?" Cui Yueji looked at Hien in surprise. "How good must it be?" Hien blushed. It was quite embarrassing. Chapter 134. After Xiaoju finished playing the zither and received everyone's praise, she returned to her seat. After that, Hien no longer had the mood to eat heartily. Who knew if there would be other people coming over to see her other talents? What if they wanted her to write poems? She couldn't just say, "I have an agreement with my husband." She sat down nervously all the way to the end of the table. Fortunately, nothing else happened. After eating and drinking, everyone dispersed. Ian followed Xiaoju out. It was only at this time that he was able to speak with Cui Yuji alone. Cui Yuji's oldest concubine walked beside Hien, slightly behind Cui Yuji and Xiaoju. This concubine was older than Hien. She looked gentle and honest, and her surname was Wei. Concubine Wei said, "Young master is really good to young mistress." Hien was stunned. Just as he was about to ask, "Why do you say that?" he thought about it and said with a smile, "Yes, my husband loves me very much. He usually listens to me and is always on my side. I also feel that I am really lucky in my previous life to be able to find such a good husband in this life." Concubine Wei laughed and said, "Everyone says that the women of Jiang are straightforward. I think young mistress is the one who has something to say." Hien laughed in his heart. If he gave Xiaoju the title of excessively doting on wife, wouldn't she be able to use this title to do whatever she wanted in Jiang? Xiaoju probably didn't expect that she would dig a hole for herself. As they spoke, the two of them had already entered the main hall of the residence. They didn't know which concubine of Cui Yuji's had already prepared hot tea. and was waiting for them to enter. Cui Yuji sat down on a chair and waved his hand. All of you are dismissed. The concubines and servants all left. He smiled and said, Huanqing Yen sit. Although Cui Yuji was a cavalry officer, he didn't put on any airs. He looked no different from a soldier in the army. He looked honest and kind, but he had a pair of bright and sharp eyes. They were like a blunt and heavy saber. When the saber was unsheathed, it was terrifying. Xiaoju and He Yan sat down on the chairs beside him. Yesterday, I wanted to come back and pick you up, but Her Highness the Princess held a banquet and couldn't come back. It's only today that we meet. He carefully observed Xiaoju for a while, then sighed and said, Just now at the banquet, I only thought that you looked good. Now that I look carefully, you and my dead big brother do have some similarities. He Yan. He looks similar to me as well. Cui Yuezhi said, As expected of a member of my Cui family. He Yan. Xiaoju nodded. When you were born, I even carried you. At that time, you were only the size of 2 of my fists. Maybe only 1 of my fists. Cui Yuezhi said, Big brother couldn't bear to let me touch you. Later, you were taken away. His eyes dimmed. Big brother and sister-in-law missed you before they died. If they could see you being so outstanding today, they would be very happy. Xiaoju was silent. Cui Yuezhi laughed. Look at me. Why would I talk about these unhappy things? What a bummer. Huanqing Yuyan, you came at the right time. In a few days, it will be the spring equinox. Jiang's Water God Festival will be held. You must join in the fun. I guarantee that you won't want to leave. He Yan was surprised. Spring equinox? What? Cui Yuezhi said. Is there something wrong? No. He Yan laughed. It's just that my birthday is also the spring equinox. A few days later. What a coincidence. Really? Cui Yuezhi was also surprised for a moment. Then he laughed. It seems that Yu Yan and Jiang are fated. Your birthday coincides with the Water God Festival. Huanqing, when the time comes, you must celebrate Yu Yan's birthday. Xiaoju glanced at her and said, Okay. They chatted for a while more. Then Cui Yuezhi stood up and said, Huanqing Yuyan, come with me to the ancestral hall to offer incense to big brother and sister-in-law. You haven't seen each other for many years. If they know that Huanqing is married now, they will be very happy. He Yan and Xiaoju followed him to the ancestral hall. After Cui Yuezhi offered incense, it was already late. Cui Yuezhi asked the servants to bring them back to their rooms, so that they could rest early. When tomorrow arrived, they would go sightseeing in Jiang City. When the 2 of them returned to their rooms, He Yan impatiently sat down on the bed and said, I'm so tired. I've been sitting upright for the whole day. Pretending to be a woman is really not something that humans can do. Even the daily training in the martial arts field is much easier than this. Pretending to be a woman? Xiaoju chuckled. It seems like you really don't think of yourself as a woman. He Yan was also very helpless. He thought that this couple that Xiaoju found was also a talented woman. If she wanted to pretend to be the daughter of a military officer, or the girl who helps the docks move firewood for sure too, it would be perfect. Xiaoju took off her outer garment and placed it on the wooden table next to the sofa. He Yan sat up. I really have to thank you for today. If it wasn't for your help, something big would have happened. Didn't I spoil my wife too much? Didn't I do everything for your sake? Second young Master Zhao's voice carried a hint of sarcasm. That's what I should do. He Yan. Did you hear that? Although it was all a lie, it was still very embarrassing for Xiaoju to hear it. She smiled and said, I just wanted to make our relationship seem more loving and real. Young master, please don't be angry. Just as they were talking, someone knocked on the door. He Yan said, Come in. Cui Jiao and Hong Xiao each carried a basket of food and placed the plates on the table one by one. He Yan was startled and asked, I didn't ask anyone to make food. I asked. Xiaoju said, Leave it here and go out. Cui Jiao and Hong Xiao obeyed and left the room. He Yan asked curiously, Didn't you eat enough? You were at the banquet just now. Xiaoju sneered. I wonder who was the one who couldn't sit still because of Ling Xiao. He was so frightened that he didn't even eat. He said, promising. He Yan muttered, You found out. Xiaoju. Yes, everyone found out. Is it that obvious? He Yan was very suspicious, but when he saw the food on the table he immediately became happy. He said, so these are specially for me? Thank you, young master. Young master, you're too kind. There's no one better than you in the world. Don't say any more. Xiaoju frowned slightly. It makes me sick. He Yan was already used to his way of speaking. He pulled him to the table and sat down. Just treat it as supper. You can eat with us. I'm not eating. Eat. He Yan pulled his sleeve and didn't let him go. He gave him a pair of chopsticks. Look, there are 2 pairs of chopsticks here. They were originally prepared for 2 people. I can't finish them alone. Young master, please help me. Xiaoju seemed to have heard a joke. He said lightly, Lady, he might have underestimated his good appetite. Although I have a good appetite, I'm not a glutton. He Yan said. Besides, haven't you heard of the saying, a feast for the eyes? I could eat 3 bowls of rice, but after seeing young master's good looks, I can eat 5 bowls. Xiaoju choked for a moment. Are you a pig? Don't speak so harshly. He Yan said as she pushed a plate of shrimp seeds with winter bamboo shoots and 3 gourd rolls in front of him. Don't you like to eat these? Eat. Xiaoju was stunned. After a moment he looked up at her. How did you know? He Yan stuffed a piece of 1,000-layer steamed cake into her mouth. I saw you eat twice during breakfast. During lunch, you did it again. You won't touch anything you don't like. I guess you like it. But you're strange. Why do you like to eat vegetarian food? Are all rich people so particular? She thought to herself. No wonder his waist was so thin. Xiaoju didn't answer her. He just lowered his head and ate slowly. He Yan didn't care about him. When she was young, she wanted to be a man. Because she was afraid of being exposed, she especially liked to study the details. After all, the details determine success or failure. She carefully observed all the men in the He family. At one time, some people even thought that he had a mental problem. Later, when he was in the army, it was better. After all, he had been a man for many years and already had experience. If she really wanted to observe a person, she would be able to observe very carefully. Moreover, Xiaoju was now with her. It was too easy for her to know what he liked to eat and what he disliked to eat. Is your birthday really after the spring equinox? He Yan was eating happily when Xiaoju suddenly asked. She paused for a moment, but didn't show it on her face. She said indifferently, How is that possible? I just said it casually. What if Master Cui wants to give me a birthday gift? Wouldn't I take the opportunity to make a lot of money? Xiaoju snorted. Liar. How am I a liar? He Yan took an inch and wanted a mile. She boldly retorted. I think young master was the one who pretended to be perfect at the banquet today. You fooled everyone. What, I have an agreement with my wife. Ha ha ha, young master. To be honest, I didn't expect to hear such words from you. Xiaoju calmly looked at He Yan's teasing. When she was done laughing, he asked, Is it very funny? It is very funny. He nodded. Then you can deal with it yourself in the future, Madam Qiao. He Yan couldn't laugh anymore. She said, Young master, I just said it casually. Please don't take it to heart. Xiaoju ignored her and drank the soup unhurriedly. Stingy, she said. You are so stingy that it makes people gasp in amazement. Xiaoju was still unmoved. He Yan rolled her eyes and softened her voice. Husband, this concubine was wrong. Please forgive this concubine's rudeness. This concubine won't dare to do it again. Husband. Xiaoju couldn't take it anymore. Shut up, he said. You'd better speak properly. He Yan understood that the cold and emotionless military governor Xiao was someone who was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. She laughed loudly. Her laughter traveled to the room next door. Fei Nu and Qi Wu, who were playing cards with Lin Shuanghe, raised their heads at the same time. Qi Wu sighed and said, To actually go to such an extent to put on an act, the governor is really too hard-working. That He Yan is the same. He practically thinks of himself as a woman. If they are like this, what reason do we have not to work hard? Fei Nu was speechless. Lin Shuanghe heard this and also held back his laughter. Yes. Indeed, they are very hard-working. At night, one person slept on the bed, and the other slept on the side of the couch. The next morning, Yan woke up slightly later. When he woke up, he saw Xiaoju standing at the door talking to Fei Nu and Qi Wu. Yan washed up and Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao brought breakfast to the kitchen. Yan said to Xiaoju, "Young master, it's time to eat." "You eat by yourself," Xiaoju said. "I have something to do today, and will not be in the residence. You and Lin Shuanghe stay in the residence. Don't run around." "Are you going out? What are you going to do?" Yan asked. "Can you bring me along?" Xiaoju was silent for a moment. She said, "It's not convenient." Yan hesitated for a moment. He walked over and whispered, "Are you going to look for Qianqi's whereabouts?" Qi Wu was stunned when he heard this. He didn't expect Xiaoju to tell Yan about this. "Yes. It will be suspicious if I bring you along." Yan nodded. "Okay, then you go." It was rare for her to be so straightforward. She didn't stick to him like a tail. Xiaoju was surprised for a moment. She looked at her thoughtfully. Yan turned and walked into the room. "If you want to go, go quickly. If I change my mind, you won't be able to get rid of me." Xiaoju didn't say anything. She led Qi Wu and Fei Nu away. After they left, Yan finished his breakfast alone. Cui Yuezhi wasn't in the residence. He went to train the soldiers early in the morning. Yan went to the next room to look for Lin Shuanghe. He didn't find him. Lin Shuanghe's servant smiled and said, "Housekeeper Lin went out early in the morning. He said he was going to buy some things and will be back later." Yan thought for a moment and understood. Lin Shuanghe wasn't a real housekeeper. He had been around Xiaoju for the past few days, so he was probably tired of her. It was rare for Xiaoju to go out today. He had some free time, so he naturally went out to play for the whole day. However, this person was too unkind. He didn't call her along when he went out. He was probably afraid that she would complain to Xiaoju. However, Lin Shuanghe's actions were exactly what Yan wanted. She had been in Jiang City for a few days, but because she was now Wen Yuyan, she was always with Xiaoju. She didn't have any extra time to inquire about Lu Buwang's whereabouts. Today, Xiaoju and Lin Shuanghe weren't here, so she could act alone. When Lu Buwang parted with her, he had said that if she had the chance to pass by Jiang City in the future, there was a tea house at the foot of the Lian Mountains outside Jiang City. If she wanted to find him, she could go to the tea house to inquire. She might have a chance to meet him again. Yan put on her outer clothes and packed her things. Seeing this, Cui Jiao asked, "Madam, are you going out?" "Young master and the housekeeper aren't here today. I don't know anyone in the residence, so it's quite boring. Let's go out and take a look. The weather is very good these days. Why don't we go for a walk in the mountains outside Jiang City?" The two maidservants looked at each other. Why would she want to go for a walk in the mountains? "It's settled then," Yan said. After thinking for a while, she put the 9-section whip that could be stretched into several pieces in her arms, turned around, and walked out of the door. "Let's go." Without Xiaoju, Yan was free and unrestrained. She was a guest of the Cui family, so no one in the Cui family dared to stop her. Zhong Fu was worried about her going out alone, so he wanted her to take 2 guards from the Cui family with her, but Yan refused. "I'm just going to walk around nearby. I won't go far. Moreover, it's broad daylight and there are many people here. There shouldn't be anyone who dares to steal. Housekeeper Zhong can rest assured. I'll go find my husband after a while. The 2 guards by my husband's side are skilled in martial arts, so they should be enough." Only then did Zhong Fu reluctantly agree. After leaving the Cui family, Yan asked Cui Jiao to hire a carriage not far from the residence. She asked the coachman to head out of the city. Hong Qiao carefully asked, "Madam, are we really going out of the city?" "We're not going out of the city. We're going to take a look at Qiyun Mountain outside the city." Yan said, "When I came here, I passed by Qiyun Mountain. I saw the beautiful scenery on the mountain and yearned for it. Since I'm free today, it's just right to go now." She spoke as if she was telling the truth. The 2 maidservants did not doubt her. When they arrived at the city gate, Yan showed the token that Cui Yuji gave her to the city gate guards. When the city gate guards saw that she was someone from the Cui family, they easily let her go. Yan was allowed to leave the city. Qiyun Mountain was just outside the city gate. It was not difficult to walk. When they reached the foot of the mountain, Hien pretended to say, "I'm a bit thirsty. Why don't we look for a tea house nearby and rest for a while before going?" Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao naturally would not say no. Hong Qiao got off the carriage and said, "Madam, rest in the carriage first. This servant will go down and take a look." Not long after, Hong Qiao came back and said with a smile, "There's a tea house nearby. It's not far away. Madam, this servant will help you down. Let's walk there directly." Hien readily agreed. Not long after they walked, they saw a tea house under a locust tree at the foot of the mountain. There were 2 or 3 customers drinking tea and chatting. Hien went up and asked for a few cups of tea and a little bit of tea. She let Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao moisten their throats with the coachman. "Madam, this servant is not thirsty. This servant is not thirsty either. It's such a long journey. How can you not be thirsty?" Hien said, "Drink. I'll ask the shopkeeper if there's anything fun around here." Without waiting for the 2 to answer, Hien walked straight ahead. The owners of the tea house were a middle-aged couple. Their heads were wrapped with a green cloth and their skin was dark. Probably because of the heat, it was a little red. When the aunt saw Hien, she asked, "Miss, are the tea and snacks not to your taste?" Hien said with a smile, "No, I'm here to ask you about someone." "Ask about someone?" The shopkeeper put the handkerchief in his hand on his shoulder. "Miss, who do you want to ask about?" "His name is Lu Buwang," Hien gestured. "He's a head taller than me. He's quite good-looking. He's about 40 years old. He carries a zither and a sword. He likes to wear white clothes like a swordsman." After a pause, she added, "He doesn't necessarily wear white clothes. In short, he's an extremely elegant man." After all, she hadn't seen Lu Buwang for many years. Perhaps the current Lu Buwang didn't like to wear white clothes anymore. The aunt thought for a moment and smiled, saying, "Miss, the person you're talking about is layperson Yun Lin, right?" "Layperson Yun Lin?" "Yes, we don't know his name. However, a few days after the Water God Festival every year, he'll appear in our tea house and ask us for a cup of tea. As for layperson Yun Lin, we just heard others call him that, so we called him that. We don't know his name either. However, according to what you said, the person who wears white clothes, is very elegant, is good-looking, and carries a zither should be this person." Hien was delighted and only asked, "Then do you know where he is now?" "Miss, you're making things difficult for us," the shopkeeper said. "In this place, we don't ask people where they came from. Naturally, we don't know where he is now, but don't be discouraged. He comes here every year after the Water God Festival. I think he should be in Jiang City now to catch up with the Water God Festival during the spring equinox." Hien looked troubled. Jiang City wasn't small. If she borrowed Cui Yueji's men, it might not be difficult to find Lu Buwang. Unfortunately, this matter couldn't be known to others. Naturally, she could only look for him alone. It wouldn't be easy. Seeing her strange expression, the aunt asked, "Miss, who is he to you? Why are you looking for him?" "He's an old friend that I haven't seen for a long time." Hien smiled bitterly. After a moment, she said, "If that layperson Yun Lin comes here to drink tea again after the Water God Festival this year, I'll have to trouble the shopkeeper to help me pass a message to him. Tell him that he is now in Jiang City. Please don't leave and wait to meet him here." "Okay," the shopkeeper said with a smile. "I'll definitely bring it to him." Only then did Hien feel relieved. She returned to her seat in the tea house and sat down. Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao said, "Madam, the tea is cold." "It won't taste good if it's cold, so I won't drink it," Hien said. To be honest, with the lesson from her previous life, she really didn't dare to drink tea casually from outside. The 2 maidservants looked at each other. After a while, Hong Qiao asked, "Madam, have you thought about where to go?" "I just asked the shopkeeper. He said that there are wolves on the mountain these few days, so it's best not to go up the mountain." Hien lied without changing her expression. "I thought about it and felt that it's too dangerous for weak women like us. Therefore, we won't go up the mountain today. Let's go straight back to the residence." The coachman was speechless. He wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, he didn't say anything. How could she go out for a walk and then go back without doing anything? Wasn't she just playing with people? The Madam of Hu province couldn't be offended. She was clearly arrogant because she was pampered. She was too much. On the other side, Xiaoju and the other two found the location of Tsuiwei Pavilion. Lei Ho said that the person who contacted him by letter was in Jiang's Tsuiwei Pavilion. Xiaoju suspected that this person was Chai Anshi. However, the shop in front of her had become a piece of charred wood. When she smelled it carefully, she could still smell the burnt smell. This Tsuiwei Pavilion was originally a shop that sold jewelry. The scout who replied cupped his hands and said, "Half a month ago, a fire broke out one night and burned Tsuiwei Pavilion to the ground. The shop assistants, shopkeeper, and the new accountant, Mr. Chai, didn't run out. The person was gone, and the clues were cut off. Are there any bones?" Xiaoju asked. "They've all been burned to ashes. How could there be any bones?" The neighbors all said that it was very tragic. This Tsuiwei Pavilion has always been here. The government said that this place will be renovated in a few days, but the surrounding shops are all closed because they think it's unlucky. Qi Wu threw the silver ingot to the scout, who kept it. He cupped his hands and disappeared into the crowd. Xiaoju looked at his back and said after a while, "He escaped. It didn't burn earlier or later. It just had to burn half a month ago." Obviously, Lei Ho's capture was exposed, so the other party escaped. "Do we still need to investigate, young master?" Fei Nu asked. "Now that the clues are cut off, there's no need to investigate." Xiaoju turned around. The two of them were stunned. Since the other party knows that they've been exposed, they must be hiding in the dark and waiting for an opportunity to make a move. The enemy is in the dark, and so am I. Therefore, we don't have to do anything. "Just wait," he said. Chapter 135. When Hien went back, Xiaoju hadn't come back yet. She said to Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao, "I was really willful today. I'm afraid that my husband will blame me for running around without guards when he comes back. So, don't mention to him that the three of us went out today." Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao nodded. "You can leave." She fell on the bed. "I'll rest for a while." The two maids left the inner room. Hien lay on the bed with a lot on her mind. Lu Buwang might be in Jiang City, but how could she find him? If she had known this would happen, she would have agreed on a specific location with Lu Buwang when they parted. A tea house where she didn't even know his name was a bit careless. But even if she found Lu Buwang, what should she say? Hien was no longer the same as before. Even she herself felt that it was ridiculous to talk about reincarnating in someone else's body. However, she still wanted to see Lu Buwang. After all, in her previous life, Lu Buwang was one of the few people who had given her real warmth. He was both a teacher and a friend. The reason why General Feihong could become General Feihong was because of Lu Buwang's skills. Thinking of General Feihong, she couldn't help but think of Hirufei. She wondered how Hirufei was now, and whether her former subordinates had found something wrong. Su Zhiheng. Hien and Su Zhiheng should have been married. She was the legitimate miss of the He family, the real daughter of a noble family. Hien felt inexplicably irritable. She hugged the quilt and rolled to the back of the room against the wall. Her face was facing the wall, and she was unhappy. Someone's voice sounded behind her. "Why are you reflecting on your mistakes?" Hien turned around. "Young master?" She sat up with a grunt. "You're back." Xiaoju glanced at her, took off her coat, and said, "Are you bored out of your mind?" "It's really boring here." She sat on the bed, looked up at Xiaoju and asked, "How was it? Did you find Chai Anshi's whereabouts today?" "No." "Why didn't you find him?" Hien asked curiously. "Is there a mistake in the information?" "He's dead." Hien was stunned. "A fire burned them to death. Not even their bones were left." Hien frowned. "That's not right. Why did he die at this time? And he was burned to death without leaving any trace. Is this a lie?" Xiaoju smiled and said, "You're very experienced in liars." Hien sat cross-legged and analyzed for him. "I'm just being observant. Could it be that this person had received some kind of news in advance? But young master, you've always been secretive. No one should know that we're here in Jiang. Moreover, Jiang is easy to leave but hard to enter. If he really wants to hide from someone, Jiang is the best choice. I don't think he wants to leave." Xiaoju took a sip of the tea on the table and said lazily, "Continue." Hien said, Then he must be hiding and waiting for the right time to do something big. The best time to fish in troubled waters is when the waters are the most murky. When the waters in Jiang are the most murky. Isn't that the Water God Festival? These days, everyone is saying that the Water God Festival is the biggest festival in Jiang. With such a grand occasion, it'll be the right time, place, and people to cause trouble. Xiaoju laughed. Her tone was not praising, but it was not harsh either. Lady, he is really smart. Not really. He Yan modestly waved his hand. Compared to young master, I'm still a far cry. Xiaoju glanced at her. She did not know why, but her gloomy mood was lifted. She shook her head and sneered flattery. It's only right for a concubine to flatter my husband. He Yan deliberately disgusted her. This person would get used to it after being disgusted a few more times. Xiaoju looked at her with a faint smile. Before you talk about a concubine, please take a look at your sitting posture. Even your husband can't compare to your sitting posture. He Yan lowered her head and retracted her crossed legs. She coughed twice. I forgot. I think you're confused. He sneered. Are you a man or a woman? It's not like I don't want to be a woman. He Yan muttered. But someone has to treat me as a woman first. Xiaoju was startled and raised his eyes to look at her. After the young girl finished speaking, she hugged the quilt and rolled to the corner of the couch. She was so happy that she didn't seem to realize that there was a trace of disappointment in her words. But someone caught it. The 4th day of the middle of spring was the middle of the equinox. The moon lingered in the green field, and the sky was clear with intermittent clouds. On the day of the spring equinox, the entire city of Jiang celebrated the Water God Festival. Early in the morning, He Yan lay on the bed. As soon as she woke up, she felt a slight pain in her abdomen. She reached out to touch it and was shocked. She hurriedly got up. Without greeting Xiaoju, she secretly took out a menstrual pad from her bag and walked to the toilet. These days in Jiang City, things happened one after another. She had almost forgotten about it. Calculating the days, it was about time for her period to come. If one were to talk about her past life and present life, He Yan's biggest headache in the military camp would be her period. There were always a few days when it was inconvenient, and she had to carefully avoid the eyes of others. In her previous life it was fine. Probably because she had a strong body. She did not feel any discomfort. But now, Lady He was pampered and spoiled. Her period was also a bit painful. In the military camp, she could only grit her teeth and endure it. Now that she had not trained for a long time, her body was tired and she immediately felt uncomfortable. He Yan put on the menstrual pad and came out of the toilet. She could not help but sigh in her heart. Of all times, she had to come today during the Water God Festival. Wasn't she just causing trouble? She slowly returned to the room. Cui Jiao came over with a bowl of iced cheese and fresh goat's milk. The Cui family's food was really delicious. Ian really liked these snacks. Today, however, she rubbed her stomach and shook her head. I'm not eating. Xiaoju looked at her in surprise. He Yan sighed and went to the inner room to pour herself some tea. Xiaoju stared at her back and was puzzled. She asked Hong Qiao, "What's wrong with her?" Hong Qiao shook her head. "I don't know. Madam has been like this since she came back from the toilet." "You don't even know?" Lin Shuanghe walked in from outside. When he heard this, he leaned close to Xiaoju and whispered, "Her period is here. You have to take care of this girl during her period. Don't let her tire herself out. Don't move heavy objects and don't eat cold food. She's in a bad mood and might throw a tantrum at you." As soon as he finished speaking, He Yan shouted from the room, "Cui Jiao, forget it. You should bring that bowl of goat's milk over. I thought about it and still want to eat it." "Xiaoju," he said to Cui Jiao, "take it out. Don't give it to her." Cui Jiao was in a difficult position. Between the kind madam and the cold young master, she chose to listen to the young master. She took the bowl of goat's milk out. He Yan sat on the couch for a while but did not see any movement. When he walked out, he saw Xiaoju and Lin Shuanghe. There were no more snacks on the table. He asked, "Where did Cui Jiao go?" "When we leave the Fu, you should quickly dress up." Xiaoju said, "Don't wait too long." He Yan asked, "Now?" "Yes." Lin Shuanghe answered with a smile. Official Chui and the others are already in the main hall. Hien did not dare to delay any longer. The Water God Festival was a traditional festival in Jiang. Every year during the spring equinox, there would be various kinds of activities on the canal in the city center. The men were fine, but the women had to comb their hair in the style of Jiang. Hong Qiao lived near Jiang, so she was very good at combing hair. In just a moment, she had braided Hian's hair into a Jiang girl's braid. A thin braid circled around her forehead, and the braid was braided into the back of her hair. It was very delicate, and only a rose hairpin was inserted into her right temple. She was wearing a bright red long dress that was very well cinched around her waist. On her feet were black boots embroidered with small flowers. She looked lively and cute, with bright eyes and white teeth. She really looked like a girl from Jiang City. Ian walked out of the house. Lin Shuanghe's eyes lit up, and he said, "Our madam is really too beautiful. She looks good in everything." "You flatter me," Hien said humbly, and followed Xiaoju and the others to the main hall. When they arrived at the main hall, just as Lin Shuanghe said, Cui Yuezhi and his concubines were already waiting. "Huanqing is here." Cui Yuezhi stood up and said with a smile, "With Yuyan's dressing today, those who don't know better would really think that she is a girl who grew up in Jiang. Don't you think so?" The concubines obediently agreed. "It's getting late. Let's set off then," Cui Yuezhi said. Today in Jiang, they could not take carriages because the people had all gone out. The streets were crowded with people, and it was very inconvenient to take carriages. The group of people walked to the canal. The canal was located in the center of the city. It passed through the city and circled around Jiang. Hien thought that Jiang's Water God Festival was similar to the Dragon Boat Festival in the Central Plains. There were rivers of all sizes in the city, and wherever there was water, there were all kinds of beautifully decorated boats. There were also boatmen dressed in red clothes and black scarves on the boats. They were singing and rowing, and they were probably singing Jiang's folk songs. It was very lively. There were also girls singing along with them by the river, and the atmosphere was very lively. Jiang's Water God Festival is also a festival for young girls and young men to pledge their love. The concubine surnamed Wei explained to Hien, "Other than worshipping the water god, there are also many festivals for lovers. I heard that Miss Yuyan and our young master are newly married. You can go and join in the fun," Hien said. "There's no need for that." Cui Yuezhi heard their conversation. He laughed and said, that's right. I remember Jiang's famous Lover's Bridge. You should go and take a look. Jiang's legends say that lovers who cross Lover's Bridge during the Water God Festival will never be separated." Hien whispered to Xiaoju, "Did you hear that? We will never be separated." Xiaoju's gaze fell on her face. She sneered, "How scary." Hien was speechless. After all, they were not a real couple. The words "never be separated" did not sound like a blessing. Instead, it sounded more like a curse. Unfortunately, Cui Yuezhi seemed to have an endless amount of concern for his nephew's family matters. He walked to a place not far from the canal and said, "Look, this is Lover's Bridge." Hien looked in the direction he was pointing. He saw that there was a bridge about 7 to 8 feet above the canal. The two ends of the bridge were submerged in the tall stone walls on both sides. This bridge was a suspension bridge. It swayed and was very narrow. It could barely allow 1.5 people to cross. If there were 2 people, they would have to be very close to each other. The bridge was made of wooden planks. However, the gaps between the planks were very large. If one was not careful, they would fall. Just looking at this kind of suspension bridge made people feel terrified. If one walked on it, they would see the torrential river. Moreover, it was high up. A timid person would probably be scared to the point of peeing their pants. This is Jiang's Lover's Bridge. Cui Yuezhi sounded proud. Only courageous people who are deeply in love with each other dare to walk on this bridge. If they walk on it, the water god will bless them. These 2 lovers will never be separated. After he said this, he patted his chest. "I've only walked on it 4 times. Hien looked at the 4 concubines behind him. He did not say anything, but he was very puzzled. Would the water god really bless them if they walked on it too many times? Wouldn't they feel offended? Moreover, to be together with several people for a lifetime without being separated, It sounded a little too disrespectful. If she walked on it, she would only walk on it once in her life, and she would only walk with one person. When she thought about this, she felt that she was thinking too much. What did this have to do with her? In this life, she probably would not have this opportunity. This opportunity is hard to come by. Huanqing Yiyan, you two should walk on it too. Yiyan. Question mark. Yiyan, are you afraid of heights? Cui Yuezhi smiled. Don't worry. Even if you fall, there are people around you who will be responsible for catching you. You should know that there are thousands of lovers who walk on Lover's Bridge every year, but only a few cross it. If there is any danger, they would not be allowed to cross the bridge. Crossing the bridge is just a test of courage and love. He looked careless, but when he mentioned this, he was especially meticulous. Love will give you courage. Courage born from love will make you invincible. Yiyan thought. But there is no love between Xiaoju and me, so where did the courage come from? Concubine Wei smiled and agreed. That's right, Miss Yiyan. Didn't you say that young Master Huanqing is obedient to you and dotes on you? He loves you so much, so he will definitely protect you and walk on the bridge together safely. Their discussion was so heated that some people in the surrounding crowd could hear them. Yiyan and Xiaoju were both outstanding, so the people around them started to jeer kindly. Young Master, walk on the bridge with Miss Yiyan. After crossing Lover's Bridge, you will love each other until your hair turns white. Go on. Seeing that you are a perfect match, the water god will bless you. Yiyan was clustered in the middle of the crowd. Hearing the jeers around him, he felt helpless. However, Lin Shuanghe did not mind the commotion. He also laughed and said, that's right. Since we are already here, let's walk on the bridge and show them. Erhu Province's young master is very brave. Cui Yuezhi patted Xiaoju's shoulder. Moreover, Her Highness loves lovers whose love is stronger than gold. If you can cross Lover's Bridge, it will be much more convenient when I bring you into the prince's mansion to see Her Highness. Princess Muhongjin. Yiyan was stunned. Xiaoju frowned slightly and said, okay. Yiyan. Young master? She did not really have to walk on this Lover's Bridge, did she? She was not afraid of heights, nor was she afraid of the water god, nor was she afraid of crossing the bridge. However, when these three things were added together with Xiaoju, why did it sound so creepy? It was ridiculous. Xiaoju turned to look at her and said calmly, are you afraid? I'm not afraid of anything else. Yiyan whispered. I'm afraid of damaging your reputation. His gaze was indifferent and his tone was calm. I've already damaged it so many times. This time won't make a difference. Yiyan. Coincidentally, she was pushed to the end of Lover's Bridge with Xiaoju. When she walked to the end of the bridge, she realized that the bridge was narrower than it looked from below. The gap between the wooden planks was especially large. It was almost as if they had to jump to cross the bridge. It was fine for one person to walk up, but if there were two people, they would have to stick close to each other. Naturally, they could not use qinggong. They could only try to maintain their balance and rely on the tacit understanding of the person beside them. With a little bit of luck, they could cross the bridge. Yiyan cursed in his heart. It would be fine if they knew martial arts. Thinking about it, if a weak scholar brought a lady to cross the bridge, it would be strange if they did not fall. Although there was someone below to catch them, they would still be frightened. Moreover, it was not a good sign. They would be looking for bad luck for no reason. The water god's conditions were too harsh. Cui Yuezhi and the others did not come up. They only looked at them from afar. Lin Shuanghe shouted loudly, young master, madam, the water god will definitely protect you. Tiwu was speechless. He whispered to Fei Nu, young master has sacrificed too much this time. If it was fake, it would be fine. They would have walked for nothing. If the water god was real, it was too scary. Two men would never leave each other's side for life? Their young master did not have homosexual tendencies. If the old master was in the ground, he would be so angry that he would come back to life. Thinking about this, he felt that this was inappropriate. He could only pray in his heart. It's a temporary measure, a temporary measure. Water god, please be magnanimous. Please don't take it seriously. Yiyan looked at the narrow bridge and felt troubled. He asked Xiaoju, how do we walk? Walk one by one? Do you think we can walk one by one? Xiaoju asked in return. He Yan lowered his head and looked at the crowd on the shore. He said helplessly, maybe not. Xiaoju stretched out her hand and said, hold on to me. The hand that was exposed from her sleeve was slender and well-defined. Yan hesitated for a moment. He did not grab her hand. He only grabbed her wrist. Seeing that Xiaoju did not have any reaction, his heart calmed down. He encouraged himself again and again in his heart. It's just a festival. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. They are not real lovers. There's no need to think too much. We just have to cross the bridge quickly. Let's go. Xiaoju walked forward. The two of them walked onto the bridge together. As soon as he stepped on the bridge, the suspension bridge began to sway and tremble, as if it was going to throw him off. The weight of the wooden planks could not allow two people to walk side by side. The only way was to be close to each other. However, Xiaoju and Yan could not do that. Therefore, Yan could only walk slightly forward while Xiaoju followed behind. He used his hands to protect Yan's side and staggered a little. However, this way, it looked like Xiaoju was holding Yan in his arms and the two of them walked forward together. Yan was a little uncomfortable at such a close distance. If he raised his head slightly, his forehead would almost touch Xiaoju's chin. He could only look straight ahead and pretend as if nothing had happened. She said, Commander-in-Chief, this bridge is shaking so much that it's difficult to walk. Why don't we use Qinggong? Or pretend that we can't walk and fall. Someone will catch us anyway. After a moment of silence, Xiaoju said, step on my boots. Hold on tight. Yan was stunned. That's not good, right? Hurry up. Since he had already said so, Yan could not refuse again. Moreover, it was indeed much simpler for two people to walk on the lover's bridge. However, where should he put his hands if he were to step on his boots? If he put his hands on his waist, it would seem a little ambiguous. However, if he grabbed his wrist like he did just now, it would be too unstable. After thinking about it, Yan reached out and clasped his shoulders. He could barely maintain his balance. Hold on tight, Xiaoju said. As she spoke, she held the two ropes of the suspension bridge with both hands and slowly walked forward. In the past, it was not that no one had thought of other methods. For example, a man would carry his beloved girl and directly cross the bridge. However, it was the first time that one person stepped on the other person's boots and walked on the other person's path. If one were to say that this was smart, it was smart and moving. However, if one were to say that it was intimate, it seemed a little restrained. The crowd under the bridge was a little confused, but they did not think too deeply about it. They just assumed that the young masters and young ladies from Hu province were not as open as Jiang, and did not like to do anything overly intimate in public. That was why they acted this way. However, in the eyes of the people who came with them, there was a big difference. Qi Wu immediately sucked in a breath of cold air. He looked at Yan as if he had sullied his master. He only said hatefully, how can it be like this? This brat is taking all the advantage. Who was the one taking advantage? Yan on the bridge wanted to cry but had no tears. The suspension bridge was extremely unstable. With every step that Xiaoju took, it swayed violently. His steps were very steady and his expression was also calm. Yan felt his heart beating very fast. When they reached the middle of the bridge, the wooden plank under Xiaoju's feet seemed to be unstable. He stepped on it and his body tilted, almost falling down. Yan was shocked and instinctively reached out to wrap his arms around Xiaoju's neck. When he came back to his senses, both of them were stunned. The distance between them was very close. If his lips were a millimeter closer, Yan's lips would have touched the corner of his mouth. Yan looked up and met Xiaoju's limpid eyes. At this moment, Xiaoju's eyes were deep like a bottomless pool with layers of ripples. The handsome young man's thin lips were tightly pursed and his Adam's apple moved slightly. For a moment, he seemed to want to say something. However, after a while he gently turned his head away. Yan was extremely embarrassed. She whispered, I'm sorry. Xiaoju did not answer. Yan did not dare to look at Xiaoju's face. For some reason, he felt that the atmosphere had become awkward. In his heart, he only hoped that they could quickly finish walking on the bridge. On the other side of the bridge, the crowd was looking forward to the show. Xiaoju steadied himself and continued to walk forward. He Yan saw that they were about to reach the end of the bridge. He was delighted and immediately let out a long sigh of relief. Secretly, he thought that this was even more torturous than the day training at the martial arts arena. When Xiaoju reached the end of the bridge, He Yan could not wait and said, "We're here, we're here." She wanted to take a step back and increase the distance between her and Xiaoju, who knew that the suspension bridge had not been repaired for many years and was already unstable. When she took a step back, the wooden planks behind her flipped and she stepped on nothing. Xiaoju softly reprimanded, "Be careful." He Yan grabbed her and pulled her to his side. He Yan followed the force and fell forward. She only felt that she had fallen into a warm embrace. She subconsciously steadied herself and raised her head to look. It would have been better if she did not move. Once she moved, the other party seemed to be looking down at her as well. Thus, a warm and soft thing that was as light as a feather brushed past her forehead. It was only for a moment, and then it was gone. She froze on the spot. Chapter 136. He Yan did not know what to do for a moment. He stood there and did not dare to move. He only felt that the place where his lips had touched was burning hot. Xiaoju also froze. She stood there without moving. Her beautiful eyes drooped, and no one could tell what her expression was. However, Big Brother laughed and said, "Why are you standing there? This young master has already arrived." Xiaoju seemed to come back to her senses. She let go of his hand as if she had been stung by a bee. She turned around coldly and said, "Let's go." He Yan replied with a no. He covered up the turbulent waves in his heart and pretended that nothing had happened. He followed behind Xiaoju. However, he was screaming in his heart. She actually kissed Xiaoju? Although it was only on the forehead, such an intimate contact was really hard to ignore. Even if it was just an accident, this accident came at the wrong time. They had just crossed Lover's Bridge. If the water god saw this, he might really think that they were lovers. He Yan shivered. Xiaoju did not know if it was because of what had happened just now. She walked very quickly. He Yan could only quicken his pace to follow her. When they returned to Cui Yuji's side, the people who had been watching the show clapped. Cui Yuji also laughed and said, "Huanqing, you are indeed a son of the Cui family. You passed it on your first try. I was still thinking that if you did not succeed this time, you would not dare to do it next time. Ha 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 ha. I did not expect that you would pass Lover's Bridge so smoothly." He Yan thought to himself that he was even thinking about the next time. This Lover's Bridge really had no bottom line. This is good. Concubine Wei smiled and patted He Yan's hand. "After crossing Lover's Bridge with young Master Huanqing, we will not be separated even if we go to the ends of the earth." He Yan. It was really scary. Qi Wu and Fei Nu were also speechless. Only Lin Shuanghe was overjoyed. Waving his fan, he said, "Even I want to take a walk." "Then you go," He Yan said angrily. Just now, Lin Shuanghe did not hesitate to kick up a fuss. "That's fine," Lin Shuanghe said reservedly. "There are so many things in the world. Why should we drink all of them? This bridge doesn't fit me. Moreover, where am I going to find a girl who can carry me across the bridge?" "Xiaoju, shut up." He Yan did not dare to say anything. This joke was too embarrassing. Fortunately, when they were getting off the bridge at the end, they were far away. Everyone only saw that she almost fell and Xiaoju caught her, so they didn't see the mark on her forehead. Otherwise, if Lin Shuanghe made a joke about it, she would be too ashamed to show her face. Since we've finished crossing Lover's Bridge, let's take a look at the other activities of the Water God Festival. Cui Yueji smiled. "Look, this is the market square on the water." Jiang was close to the water, so boats of all sizes were already docked on the river. At the stern of the boat, there were people sitting and rowing. At the bow of the boat, there were all kinds of snacks, fruits, or jewelry. If someone on the shore took a fancy to something, they would wave their hand and the boat would stop by the shore, allowing the guest to carefully choose. If a tourist on the boat took a fancy to something, both boats would stop in the middle, and the hawkers on the boat would let them choose. He Yan saw a small boat selling horseshoe-shaped pastries wrapped in large green leaves. The pastries were embedded with Chinese yams and red dates and sprinkled with a thin layer of honey. They looked very tempting. Cui Yueji saw that she liked them, So he asked his servant to stop the boat on the shore and buy a few packets. Hien took the packet, thanked him, and took a bite. Immediately, she felt the fragrance in her mouth and cheeks. It was so sweet that it made her salivate. She sighed inwardly. Compared to these pastries, the cakes that she and Hiyinsheng sold in Shuajing were very ordinary. She ate seriously. Her mouth was puffed up like a squirrel. Xiaoju couldn't stand it anymore and said, "There's pastry crumbs on your mouth." What? Hien didn't hear clearly. The next moment, Xiaoju angrily threw a handkerchief at her face. "Wipe it clean. It's so embarrassing." Hien. She wiped her mouth and said, "There's so much trouble." As she said that, she heard a burst of exclamations from the other side. She turned around and saw a horse racing field. There were many people surrounding it. She didn't know what they were doing. She pointed to the other side and asked, "What's that over there?" "That." Cui Yuezhi looked in the direction she pointed and said, "This is called Snatch the Wind." "What's Snatch the Wind?" "Look, there are many horses in the horse racing field." Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, "The horse track is a circle. In the middle is a high platform. There's a flag on the high platform. You have to ride a horse. When you pass by the high platform, you have to jump up and snatch the flag. After you get the flag, you have to jump down from the high platform. It's best if you land on the horse's back. If you can get the flag in the specified time, you have to successfully snatch the wind. If you can successfully snatch the wind, you will get a good prize. Next to it is a copper kettle. The shorter the time, the better the prize." Hien listened and said softly, "Isn't this a battle for the flag?" Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and asked with a smile, "It sounds interesting, but what kind of prizes are there?" "There are all kinds of prizes. If a man wants something for himself, it's mostly weapons. Sometimes, there's also silver. If a man wants something for a woman, it's mostly jewelry or cloth." As Cui Yuezhi spoke, he led a few people to the horse racing field. The horse racing field in Jiang was not big. It was not as big as the training field at the foot of Mount Baiyuer in Liangzhou. However, there were already many people surrounding it. In front of them, a few men dressed in martial arts clothes were riding past them. The horses stirred up a gust of wind. When they passed by the high platform, a few people jumped up and competed to be the first to reach the top of the flagpole. The flagpole was very high. There was no place to land, so they had to rely on their martial arts to get up. One of them reached the top of the flagpole and fell down before he could even grab the flag. He fell into the sand pit below the stage. The other person, on the other hand, barely managed to pull the flag with his hand before falling down. He didn't get to ride a horse and only received a string of copper coins as a prize. On the other side, there was a table with all kinds of prizes for snatching the wind. There was a dazzling lineup of everything. At a glance, Hien saw that there was a whip at the very top. The whip was very long and looked very tough. It was oily purple and looked very useful. Hien was afraid that his identity would be exposed, so he could not use a sword. Most of the time he used a whip. However, the whips in the training field were not considered treasures. This whip looked much better than the ones he used before. Hien was instantly tempted. She asked the owner of the horse racing field, "Excuse me, what's the prize for this whip?" The owner of the horse racing field laughed and said, "Miss, you have good taste. This is our biggest prize for snatching the wind this time. The purple jade whip is in the copper pot's hourglass. If you can grab the flag in the shortest time, you will get this whip. Today many young men came for this whip. However, no one has taken it yet. I think it will be difficult today." When she asked, everyone looked at her. Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, "Yuyan, do you like this whip?" "I think it looks very special," Hien said modestly. "Why don't you let Huanqing compete for it for you?" Cui Yuezhi smiled and said, "I have seen Huanqing's foundation. He should have practiced martial arts before. He should not be afraid to go up." After all, Cui Yuezhi was also a martial artist. He could see the other party's skills clearly. Hien looked at Xiaoju. Xiaoju said coldly, "Don't even think about it." "I have already started to think about it." Hien approached him and begged in a low voice, "Help me get this whip for me. With this whip, it will be easier for me to work for you in the future. If it wasn't for the fact that everyone here is male, I would definitely do it myself. Commander-in-Chief, General, Young Master. Husband? Xiaoju said. Shut up. Ian could only shut up. His gaze turned and landed on the purple jade whip again. He was extremely envious. Sometimes it was not easy to come across a good weapon, especially one that could be obtained for free without any effort. It was a once-in-a-decade opportunity. Wouldn't it be a pity to miss it? However, today was her period. Her abdomen was a little uncomfortable, but it should be bearable. Ian deliberated for a while. If he could get the flag in the shortest time possible, it would only hurt for a short while. It was still okay. Thinking of this, he smiled and asked the owner of the horse ranch, "May I ask if women can participate?" The owner of the horse ranch was stunned. The people around him were also stunned. The owner of the horse ranch hesitated and said, "Yes, but no one has ever done this before." Xiaoju turned her head and looked at him in disbelief. "Are you crazy?" "I have no choice," Yan said helplessly. "But I think that it will be very difficult to encounter this whip in the future. Don't worry, you know my ability. This kind of small situation is not difficult for me. Aren't you? At this point, he seemed to find it difficult to speak and didn't continue. Ian looked at him strangely. Not what? She raised her hand to tie up her hair. It was inconvenient to have long hair. As for her clothes, she could only tie them up first. Just as she raised her hand, Xiaoju grabbed her elbow. "What's wrong?" Ian asked. Xiaoju endured and stared at her like a knife. She said word by word, "I will go." Ian was stunned. Before he could say anything, Xiaoju walked forward and said something to the owner of the horse ranch. "Huanqing wants to seize the wind?" Cui Yuezhi was surprised. "For the whip that Yuyan likes?" Ian was speechless. In fact, although she had begged Xiaoju, she did not expect Xiaoju to do this kind of thing. A general who was in charge of tens of thousands of soldiers was doing this. Moreover, second young master Xiao had always been proud and would not be interested in this kind of thing. She did not expect him to really go. The owner of the horse ranch brought Xiaoju inside to get the horse. Concubine Wei smiled and said with envy, "Young Master Huanqing treats Miss Yan very well." What he said wasn't wrong, but for a moment, Yan was confused. Lin Shuanghe looked at Yan, and then looked in the direction that Xiaoju had gone. He stopped fanning himself and stood there thoughtfully. Not long after, Xiaoju came out on horseback. It was spring, a field of fresh green, warm and velvety. The handsome noble young master lit up the surrounding spring scenery. Today, in order to cater to Jiang's water god festival, he didn't wear a long robe. Instead, he wore casual clothes, which made him look even more elegant and charming. His gaze was lazy and cold as he sat upright on the horse's back. He immediately attracted everyone's attention. Yan heard a woman exclaim behind him, "What a handsome young master! His eyebrows are handsome and he looks noble. When did Jiang have such a person? Which family's young master is he?" When Yan heard this, he felt honored. A poem appeared in his mind. "The spring grass is green and the clouds are white. Thinking of the gentleman riding a horse, he looks good." He suddenly remembered when he was young at the Xianchang Pavilion. They hunted in the winter, and the one who hunted the most game would be rewarded. Xiaoju alone came out on top. At that time, Yan could barely draw his bow and shoot an arrow. In the end, he did not hunt a single game. He could only follow the crowd's shocked and envious gazes as he watched the young man walk out from the snow. He was dressed in brocade and a fox fur coat, looking very charming. Many years had passed, but he was still the same. As long as he stood in a crowd, he would become the most dazzling person. No matter how many things had happened, a pearl could not be covered in dust. Xiaoju rode his horse around the horse ranch. At this time, besides the men, many women also gathered around to see Xiaoju. Lin Shuanghe walked to Yan's side and said in a low voice, "Little sister, you are amazing. Xiao Huaijin is actually willing to stand in the limelight for you." Yan was surprised. I also did not expect him to help. Who would have thought? She suspected that Xiaoju was also possessed. But looking at how he treated her before, it did not seem like it. "Are you very touched and want to repay him with your body?" Yan was shocked and wanted to refute loudly. Suddenly, he remembered that Cui Yu and the others were still around. He could not be presumptuous. He replied in a low voice, "No, I don't like the martial governor." "If you don't like him, then why are you so nervous?" Lin Shuanghe said mischievously. "Brother, your ears are red." He Yin quickly covered his ears with both hands. "It's not like that. Don't talk nonsense." At this time, they suddenly heard a burst of exclamations from the crowd. The two of them looked in the direction of the sound and saw that Xiao Ju had already galloped to the foot of the high platform. He did not stop and directly flew up. The slippery long pole was as if he was walking on flat ground. Although the people around them were relaxed, it was not easy to go up. They had never seen such a scene and such an easy person. He was extremely fast, like lightning, and in the blink of an eye, he was already at the top of the pole. He then stepped on the end of the pole and casually pulled down the red flag. The wind blew and the flag flew in his hand. For a moment, the young man's face overlapped with that of the bright and beautiful youth in the spring. His eyes were unfocused and he slightly raised his eyebrows. He looked at the people below the platform, or perhaps he was just looking at He Yin. He smiled and said, "I got it." He Yin looked at him in a daze. For a moment, she could hear the sound of her own heartbeat. It was so loud that it was difficult to ignore. In her mind, she suddenly remembered the lessons she had listened to when she was young in the Xianchangguan. It was written in the record of the passing of the lamp. The sixth ancestor, Hui Neng, lived in the Dharma temple for the first time. There were two monks arguing. One cloud moved the wind, the other cloud moved the flag. The sixth ancestor said, "The wind does not move the flag, but it moves the heart and ears." She originally felt that these words were cryptic and difficult to understand. She did not understand what it was saying. Now there was no explanation, no reasoning. She only needed to look at it. Just one look. In this situation, she completely understood. It was not the wind, it was not the flag, it was the heart. Chapter 137. A youth in a dark green riding outfit dismounted after receiving the flag and landed on the ground. His success was astonishing. The owner of the horse ranch wasn't a stingy person. He handed the purple jade whip to Xiao Ju and praised, "Young master has great skills. In recent years, you are the fastest person to receive a flag." Cui Yuji couldn't help but clap. "Huanqing, before you arrived, I heard that your adoptive father had found a martial arts master for you. Now it seems that martial arts master has put in a lot of effort into teaching you. Even in Jiang City, it's rare to see someone with such skill." Xiao Ju nodded with a smile. "Uncle is too kind." He Yin thought that Cui Yuji still didn't know that Xiao Ju was still holding back. If he were to really fight openly, it would probably shock everyone and expose his identity. Just as she was thinking, Xiao Ju walked over and threw the purple jade whip into her arms. He Yin was overwhelmed by the favor. Thank you." He felt that Xiao Ju was different today. She seemed to be very easy to talk to and had a good heart. However, he couldn't think of a reason, so He Yin shook his head. "Now that you have the purple jade whip," Aunt Wei said with a smile. Concubine Wei smiled and said, "Why don't we go take a look at the sacrificial ceremony by the river? It's very lively. You can even get offerings from the water god. After eating the offerings, you'll be bathed in divine water. You'll be blessed throughout the year." Cui Yuji slapped his head. Right. I almost forgot about that. Huanqing Yin, you two go and pray for a good omen. How can we not attend the water god festival?" What was the water god sacrificial ceremony? He Yin was confused, but he couldn't refuse such hospitality. He followed the crowd towards the canal. When they got close, they saw that there was a large empty space near the canal. There was a round stage set up and there were many people wearing masks singing and dancing. It was probably a folk song from Jiang City. The tune was very cheerful and there were people of all ages. It was very lively. As soon as he came to a stop, he heard a lady's voice, "Lord Cui." The few of them looked over and saw Ling Xiao, the young miss of the Hall of Ceremony who had played the zither for everyone as a guest a few days ago, Ling Xiao. Beside her stood Yin Min'er, who was glaring at them with hostility. Ling Xiao was also dressed up today. She was wearing a pink corset dress and a pair of small boots that Jiang women wore. Her long hair was also tied up with small braids. She looked gentle and playful. She smiled and said, Min'er and I just arrived here, and we met Master Chui. It's really too much of a coincidence. What a coincidence. Chui Yuezhi also smiled. Xiaomin, where are your parents? Father and mother are on the boat. Min-er and I brought the servants and guards here to take a walk. We wanted to see the sacrificial ceremony and take some offerings back. His gaze fell on Xiaoju. Xiaoju was only looking in the direction of the stage and did not even look at him. Ling Xiu's heart sank. Actually, she and Yan did not see Xiaoju here. They had already seen him when they were fighting for the wind at the horse field. The young man was as handsome as the moon and was stunning beyond compare. The way he held the flag and smiled was immediately imprinted in people's hearts. It was hard to forget even if one wanted to. However, such a man was in the limelight in front of everyone just to win a whip for that woman. Ling Xiu was extremely jealous. She was born with good looks, talent, and knowledge. She was also of noble birth. There were many talented young men in Jiang City who admired her, but she looked down on none of them. However, one day, such a person came and surpassed everyone in the city. It was a pity that he was a married man, and he was so good to his wife, who looked ordinary and mediocre. If at first, Ling Xiu was only angry at Xiaoju for ignoring her, after a few times, she even hated He Yan. If there was no Wen Yiyan, if she had met Xiao Huanqing first, this would not have happened. What was so good about that woman? Xiao Huanqing must have been blinded by lard to mistake a fisheye for a pearl. He Yan was looking at the people dancing and singing on the stage with great interest. He asked concubine Wei, "Why are they all wearing masks?" A mask represents a person's identity. These are all legends related to the water god. Dancing and singing during the ceremony is actually to convey the legend of the water god. Concubine Wei smiled and said, "If Miss Yuyan likes, you can also dance with us on the stage and play one of the roles." When the ceremony is about to end, the elders will use a willow branch to dip the water of fortune and sprinkle it on everyone. After bathing in the water of fortune, there will be joy in the extreme. Yan had never heard of such folklore. He said, "It's quite interesting." Ling Xiu went forward and smiled. "Does Madame Qiao also want to go on stage?" Yan waved his hand. "I'm just saying. Min-er and I also want to go on stage and dance. If Madame is willing, it will be very lively." She stared at He Yan with a gentle and considerate smile. But for some reason, He Yan instinctively resisted. She was actually not very proficient in the relationship between women, and could even be considered careless. But she could still distinguish between ordinary hostility and friendliness. Why did Ling Xiu have an unconcealable hostility towards her? He Yan thought about it and could not think of any way to offend this lady. "Both of you are about the same age." Chui Yuezhi smiled and said, "You Yan should go up together. Our Jiang's water god ceremony is very simple and not difficult. If there is anything you don't understand, a Xiao and Min'er can teach you." Chui Yuezhi had already said it. If He Yan continued to refuse, it would seem like he did not respect Jiang's folklore. He said, "All right then. But I don't know how to dance. Don't laugh at me." "I won't." Ling Xiu said sweetly, "We will teach you." Then she pulled Yan Min'er towards the stage. "Let's go get the masks first." Yan braced herself and sighed. Forget it. Even if Ling Xiu and Yan Min'er were hostile to her, they didn't know martial arts, so they wouldn't do anything to her. It was nothing more than some harmless little jokes. It was not a big deal for her to be clever. As she was thinking, she heard someone beside her say, "Why didn't you refuse?" He Yan was surprised and turned to look. Xiaoju's gaze fell on her face. She could not tell what kind of expression he had. He said mockingly, "You obviously don't like it. Why didn't you refuse?" "I don't think that's a good idea." He Yan hesitated. "If I refuse, Master Chui might not be happy." He laughed as if he did not agree with He Yan's way of doing things. He said, "If you don't like it, just refuse. You have the ability to refuse, Lady He." He reminded her, "You can't make everyone happy." That was true, but it seemed to have become a habit for her to try her best to make everyone happy and achieve perfection. On the other hand, Yan Min'er pulled Ling Xiu aside and whispered, "What do you mean by this? Who wants to dance with her?" I can't wait to annoy her. I'm not going. Wait. Ling Xiu grabbed her. Let me finish. What are you talking about? I've heard about what happened at the Xiu Lua workshop. Yan Min-er's face immediately turned red when she heard this. She choked for a moment and said, How did you know? Who doesn't know about this now? The news has already spread. Ling Xiu looked at her with a smile. Don't be angry. Of course I'm on your side. Besides, I don't like Wen Yuyan. If that's the case, how can I let her have it easy? What do you want to do? Yan Min-er said angrily. Isn't this a dance? I don't want her to be in the limelight. I want her to make a fool of herself. Ling Xiu smiled and pointed at the masks at the side. Let her suffer. The girls of Jiang are not so easy to bully. I've never seen Madame dance. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and said meaningfully, I'm really looking forward to having such an opportunity to broaden my horizons today. He Yan thought to himself, she doesn't know how to dance. At most, she can dance with a sword. However, she's a foreigner. Even if she dances at the ceremony, others will only treat her too harshly. I just hope that she doesn't make a big mistake. I'm just here for the fun. While he was thinking, Ling Xiu and Yan Min-er came over. Yan Min-er was holding a few masks in her hands while Ling Xiu was holding a wooden box. When she walked in front of He Yan, Ling Xiu looked troubled and said, I just went to ask Seely. Many people came to the ceremony today, and there are only a few masks left. I don't know how to distribute them. Why don't we draw lots to decide? Aren't they just masks? He Yan didn't care too much and asked, What's the difference? Different masks represent different characters. In the legend of Jiang's water god, there are also some villains and clowns. Ling Xiu paused and smiled. However, the possibility of Madame picking the clown character is not high. It shouldn't be. He Yan nodded and said modestly, You guys pick first. Madame, you're not from Jiang. You should pick first, Ling Xiu said with a smile. There was no point in rejecting this kind of thing. He Yan said, Okay. As he spoke, he reached into the wooden box that Ling Xiu was holding and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She opened the paper and saw the words Li Lai written on it. Li Lai? What does it mean? She asked hesitantly. Cui Yu was stunned. Concubine Wei was also a little surprised. However, Ling Xiu covered her mouth and exclaimed, It's actually Li Lai. Madam, today it's really unfortunate. Is that bad? He Yan was puzzled. Just as I said, in the legend of Jiang's water god, there are many villains and clowns. Li Lai is one of them. This is a liar who is full of lies. He committed all kinds of evil by the water of the mortal world, and cheated many people of their wealth. He didn't even let the elderly and children go. He did the most shameless things in the world. The deities in the heavens couldn't stand it anymore, and sent a subordinate of the water god, a fairy, to subdue him. This liar can be full of lies in front of others, but in front of the deities, he can only speak the truth in his heart. He said all 10 of his secrets, and in the end, he was locked in the underwater prison by the deities. He can't go ashore for the rest of his life. He Yan listened and unconsciously put himself in the shoes of the deities. When he heard that he can't go ashore for the rest of his life, he couldn't help but say, How tragic. It's quite tragic. Yan Min-er put on a fake smile and said, However, since you have already drawn the lot, you can only act as Li Lai. If you have already decided to participate in the water god ritual, and go back on your words halfway, you will be punished by the water god. He Yan really wanted to ask how the water god would punish her. However, on second thought, didn't she die in the water in her previous life? She didn't know if it was a coincidence. She said, So be it. In this world, someone has to act as a clown, right? Cui Yuezhi was still a little hesitant. But Yu Yan, that mask. What's wrong with the mask? Ling Xiu took the mask from Yan Min-er and handed it to He Yan. This is Li Lai's mask. He Yan saw the mask and understood why Cui Yuezhi had such an expression just now. Li Li's mask looked like a leopard cat, and it was an extremely ugly leopard cat. It was drawn with a fierce look, but in the middle of the eyes and nose, there was a large white area painted. It looked both treacherous and ugly. Girls would definitely not want to wear such a thing on their face. Moreover, this mask was very heavy. When she wore it on her head, it would make her head bigger for no reason. He Yan weighed it in his hand. It's all right. She had never cared much about things like appearance. Concubine Wei's expression was not very good. After interacting with He Yan for the past few days, she only felt that He Yan's temperament was gentle and cheerful. Others might not understand, but she grew up in the inner residence. Jealousy between girls was something she could understand at a glance. This was clearly Ling Xiao deliberately making things difficult for He Yan. Thinking about it, to act as a clown in front of her sweetheart and perform all kinds of funny and ridiculous actions. Not to mention what others would think, just the girl herself would feel ashamed and unable to show her face. Which girl in this world didn't want to be as beautiful as she sure Diao Chan in the eyes of her lover? Concubine Wei said. How can you let Miss Yan act as a clown? Can't you tell Celie? It's fine. He Yan smiled. When it comes to the sacrificial ceremony, it will work if one is sincere. There is no need to fuss over the details. Cui Yuji did not sense that the atmosphere was not right. Hearing He Yan's words, he smiled and said, Good. Yu Yan is really straightforward. On the other side, Lin Shuanghe and Xiao Ju frowned at the same time. Lin Shuanghe covered his face with a fan and said to Xiao Ju in a low voice, The blue beauty culprit. It was you who caused the trouble and caused my sister He to suffer. Xiao Ju's expression was slightly cold. She glanced at him and was silent for a moment. Suddenly she said, You just said that Li Li's secret is to be told to the immortal. Ling Xiao saw that Xiao Ju took the initiative to talk to her and was delighted. She smiled and said, Yes. After a while, Madam will be on the stage, and will have to tell the immortals 10 secrets. Ling Xiao paused, then smiled and continued. And these 10 secrets must all be true. Legend has it that Li Li, who is full of lies, is bound by the immortal's magic, and can only tell the truth. When the time comes, Madam will also have to tell the full 10 secrets. He Yan was speechless. He suspected that this immortal was actually a lunatic who liked to pry into other people's secrets. Immortals also have roles to play. Xiao Ju's gaze lightly swept past Ling Xiao. In that case, I will do it. W. Ling Xiao was stunned. He Yan was also stunned. You don't understand? The man's gaze was as sharp as lightning. Although his tone was calm, his expression was cold. I want to act as the listener. He Yan almost choked on his own saliva. Xiao Ju's words meant that she wanted to dance with him on the stage. Was Xiao Ju crazy or was the world crazy? He Yan could not understand. No one in Shua City would believe that second young master Xiao would do such a thing. Qi Wu and Fei Nu also could not believe their eyes. They suspected that there was something wrong with their ears, and that they had misheard. Ling Xiao did not expect Xiao Ju to take the initiative to bring up this matter. For a moment, she did not know what to do. However, the man's gaze was so cold that she was a little scared. She subconsciously asked, Why? Because, Xiao Ju said with a faint smile. How can my wife's secret be known by others? With just one sentence, Ling Xiao, who was still a little scared just now, was so angry that her face turned green. He Yan. She almost fainted. She felt that Xiao Ju was not acting like Xiao Ju today. It was strange. Xiao Ju did not care about He Yan's expression. She only asked Ling Xiao, Which mask is it? Ling Xiao pointed at the one in Yan Min-er's hand. Yan Min-er was a little scared of Xiao Ju and immediately handed it over. He Yan took a look. This immortal's mask was nothing special. It was just a piece of black iron. Then a cloud pattern was painted on the forehead. How do I do it? He asked. Concubine Wei saw through the trick. She smiled and said, Actually, there are not so many rules when dancing on the altar. If you are a local, you will naturally understand. However, if you are a foreigner, as long as you are sincere and pray for the water god, no matter how you dance, it is just a formality. The water god is very forgiving. She will not be calculative over small matters. Xiao Ju said, Understood. He glanced at He Yan. Seeing that He Yan was still holding the mask, he held her wrist and said, Come here. After taking 2 steps towards the altar, He Yan looked back. He saw that Ling Xiao and Yan Min-er were looking at him with hostility. She asked, What's wrong with you? Commander-in-Chief, are you crazy? You are the one who is crazy. Xiao Ju said unhappily, Why did you agree to her? Didn't I say? Since we are already here, I am afraid that Master Chui will be unhappy. Moreover, we are just wearing a mask and dancing. We don't have to use knives and sticks. It is not a big deal to lose a piece of meat. He turned to stare at Hien and laughed sarcastically. Why don't I see you being so obedient when you are with me? Hien said. Am I not obedient enough? Xiaoju was too difficult to please. In the future, if you don't want to do this kind of thing, you can refuse. Xiaoju's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. Don't let others think that you are compromising. It is so ugly. I am not compromising. You are. He looked down at Hien and smiled mockingly. You like to lie to others. Are you going to lie to yourself too? Hien was speechless. She instinctively wanted to refute, but she had a feeling that Xiaoju was right. However, there were many times when sacrificing one's feelings and preferences had become a habit. There were more and more important things to consider. No one could tell her that she could refuse, be willful, and be unhappy. So gradually these things disappeared. Xiaoju saw Hien's listless expression and paused. She knocked her head and said, Hurry up and put it on. As she spoke, she picked up the mask in her hand and put it on her face. The mask was made of iron and was very smooth, but it was still very heavy. Xiaoju put the mask on her face with one hand, and put the other hand behind her head to pull the trigger. She couldn't get it right for a moment. Seeing this, Hien put the lyre in his hand aside and said, Let me help you. She walked behind Xiaoju and said to Xiaoju, Put the mask in the right position. I will help you from behind. Xiaoju was tall, so she could only stand on her tiptoes to pull the trigger. As she did so, she said, Have you never worn a mask before? Why can't you do something so simple? Xiaoju sneered. Have you worn a lot of masks before? Hien was stunned and laughed. Even if I have never eaten pork, I have seen pigs run. After helping Xiaoju put the mask on, she put the lyre on her face as well. One of them was wearing a mask, which made her look more mysterious and noble. The other was comical and cunning. No matter how she looked at them, it was funny. Xiaoju pulled her up to the altar. The chief of ceremonies nodded at them gently and pushed them to the center of the altar. Hien could not understand the people around them who were wearing masks and singing and dancing. Hien asked Xiaoju, Commander-in-Chief, how do we dance? Xiaoju replied, I don't know. Hien learned from the people around her and danced for a while. However, she felt that it was too difficult and gave up. She pulled Xiaoju to a corner of the altar where no one was looking and said, Forget it, forget it. Let's not dance anymore. Let's do something else. Xiaoju was wearing a mask and her expression could not be seen clearly. However, it was obvious that her face was full of impatience. Commander-in-Chief, will the water god blame us for being so perfunctory? Xiaoju asked, Are you scared? I'd rather believe it than not. This person was very cold. Then continue dancing. I really can't dance anymore. After a while Hien said, Commander-in-Chief, just now Miss Ling said that lying requires one to tell 10 secrets to the immortal. Since we're here, let's act until the end. I'll tell you my 10 secrets. That's it. Maybe the immortal will see that we're so sincere and won't mind that we don't dance. Xiaoju smiled and said lazily, Okay, go ahead. 10 secrets, and all of them had to be true. This was hard to say. She counted with her fingers and said, I used to be a good drinker, but now I'm not. I know how to memorize Wu Zi's art of war. I'm the first in the Liang province guards. I really want to join the 9 Flags Battalion. I'm the one who unbuttoned Cheng Lisu's clothes. I can sell them for money. This was already 5 secrets. Xiaoju was speechless when she heard this. She only said, boring. Hien was encouraged and continued to work hard. In my heart, Commander-in-Chief is a very good person. I'm very grateful to you. Xiaoju sneered. I won't let you join the 9 Flags Battalion. Every time Commander-in-Chief misunderstands me, I'm very sad. Xiaoju said. Continue lying. Commander-in-Chief and I were fated in our previous lives. Xiaoju didn't even bother to look at her. Hien said. I was a female general in my previous life. This was even more ridiculous. There was only one last secret left. He Yan raised his head and looked at the person in front of him. His face was covered by a mask, and he stared straight at her. Only his beautiful jawline was exposed. His lips were thin and beautiful, and they were curved lazily, showing the heartlessness and gentleness of a young man. Her own face was also covered by a mask. Hidden in the dark, it was as if she was in the middle of the night, and it gave her a sense of security. One last secret. He Yan tiptoed and leaned closer to his chin. She said softly, "I like the moon." The moon doesn't know. Chapter 138. The water god ritual would take more than an hour to finish. When He Yan and Xiaoju came down, it was already late. Ling Xiao and Yin Min were nowhere to be found. Concubine Wei said, "You two must be hungry after walking around for the whole day without eating." He Yan rubbed his stomach. "It's okay. Then let's go eat first." Cui Yuezhi said, "There are several good restaurants in Jiang. Which one do you want to go to?" "I want to." He Yan pointed at the boat with a black awning on the river. "Eat there." She had already seen many people riding small boats. There was a stove at the bow of the boat. She did not know what was simmering inside, but she guessed that it was some kind of soup. The rest of the food and wine would be bought by the hawkers on the shore, or the river with money. People could sit on the boat and eat while looking at the bustling scenery on both sides of the river. It was very special. She had never been to Jiang before. She felt that it was new and wanted to try it. "That's the Firefly boat." Concubine Wei smiled and explained. "The boatman will sail the boat to the falling Firefly spring in the evening. The weather in Jiang is warm, so there are no fireflies in the summer. They land in the forest beside the Firefly spring. When they sail the boat over at night, they can see the river in the dense forest. There are fireflies everywhere. It's very beautiful. I was lucky enough to go there with Master one year. Now that I think about it, it's very beautiful." When He Yan heard this, he wanted to go even more. He looked at Cui Yuezhi and said, "Uncle, why don't we go on this Firefly boat? Girls like these." Cui Yuezhi smiled and waved his hand. "I won't go. This Firefly boat is only prepared for couples or lovers. 2 people can ride on one boat. There are so many of us, so we can't ride on the same boat." He Yan's words were stuck in his throat. He thought that Jiang's Water God Festival was actually the Qixi Festival of the Central Plains. It was too unfriendly for people who did not have a lover. Did people who did not have a lover not have the right to see the legendary falling Firefly spring? How preposterous. Since Miss Yuyan wishes to go, then go with young Master Huanqing. Concubine Wei smiled and said, "There are many other boats around. Tonight, there should be a stage on the water. It will be very lively." Ian was struggling. She really wanted to go and experience it, but Xiaoju might not be willing. She turned to look at Xiaoju and asked tentatively, "Young master?" "Don't even think about it." "Young master, I really want to go." Xiaoju pursed her lips. "I think you're really pushing your luck. I've never seen a swarm of fireflies before," He Yan said in a low voice. "Since we're already here, don't you want to take a look? Don't treat me as a woman. Just treat me as a subordinate. We're just passing by and enjoying the local customs. Young master husband." Ian called out to him again. Xiaoju's mouth twitched. "Speak properly. If you don't agree, then this concubine will continue to speak like this." Concubine Wei covered her mouth and laughed. She seemed to be unable to watch the 2 children quarrel. She whispered a few words to Cui Yuezhi. Cui Yuezhi nodded. Concubine Wei ordered someone to go to the riverside and find a boat. She said to He Yan and Xiaoju, "Master has already paid the money. Tonight, the boat's master will take you to the Jiang River. If you see anything delicious or fun, just buy it. When the time is up, he will also take you to the falling Firefly spring." She paused and said, "I originally wanted you to bring a few bodyguards with you. However, the falling Firefly spring is patrolled by the city's garrison. There shouldn't be any problems. But if you're worried, you can." "Thank you, Concubine Wei. There's no need for bodyguards," Ian said happily. Suddenly, he thought of something and asked Xiaoju, "What if Lin Shuanghe and Qi Wu want to see it too?" Xiaoju turned around and saw that Qi Wu and the others had already taken a few steps back. They shook their heads at him, indicating that they didn't want to see it. "That's right. Rough men probably didn't like things like fireflies. Even if they liked them, they wouldn't dare to show it here. Then let's go up first. Ian was very happy. He got on the boat with the black awning first. This boat wasn't as beautiful as the boats on the Chunlai River in Shoa City. From the outside, it could even be said to be plain. However, the inside of the boat was quite spacious. There was a floor and a small stove for cooking. If one sat here, ate something, enjoyed the river breeze, and looked at the lights of the night market on both sides of the river, it would be a wonderful thing. Ian bent over and sat on the floor to look at the river. The Jiang Canal was very long. It passed through the city. Today was a festival. So many lanterns were lit on both sides of the river. Everyone was shouting and laughing. It was very lively. The boatman was a middle-aged man wearing a bamboo hat. He was very sturdy and his arms were strong. He was rowing with all his might. Ian leaned on the bow of the boat. She was originally a little afraid of water, but now that the surroundings were so lively, and perhaps because Xiaoju was by her side, she forgot a lot of her previous fears. All that was left was the novelty. Just as she was enjoying the view, a small boat suddenly brushed past her. There was a man and a woman on the boat. The woman suddenly splashed a handful of water at Hien. Hien was caught off guard and splashed water all over her face. She was stunned. The boatman laughed. "Miss, you're not from Jiang, right? You don't know the rules of Jiang. This is the canal. If two boats meet, there will be a water fight. People say that the canal feeds the people of Jiang. It's not water that gets splashed, it's good fortune and luck." The woman looked at her and smiled. Her smile was kind and a little sly. It made it difficult for her to get angry. Ian thought, what kind of rule is this? Aren't they afraid that they won't be able to go out if their clothes get wet? Ian's thought was wrong. Everyone who knew that they were going to have a water fight brought a few sets of clothes with them, so that it was convenient for them to change. She was the only one who foolishly wore a set of clothes. Cui Yueji had not been on the Firefly boat for a long time, so he had long forgotten about it. That was why he behaved this way. Probably because they saw that Hien was particularly splashy, a few boats came over. Regardless of whether they were men or women, they all bent down and scooped up a handful of water from the canal, and threw it at Hien. Hien was confused. She shouted, "Boatman, please move the boat further away." Before she could finish her sentence, a large handful of water was thrown at her face. Ian was shocked. The next moment, someone stood in front of her and pressed her head against his chest to block the incoming water. Xiaoju looked across and saw that the person who threw water at Hien was a man. He was a man who did not have the slightest sense of pity for the fairer sex. He was giggling foolishly at Hien. The corners of Xiaoju's lips curled up. In the next moment, the teacups in the boat floated in the water, and a large amount of water splashed, drenching the man from head to toe. The woman next to the man was either his wife or lover. She said anxiously, "How can you do this?" Xiaoju looked at her with a faint smile and said slowly, "I'm just giving you some good fortune. You don't have to thank me." Hien was speechless. She raised her head from Xiaoju's chest and said, "Actually, you don't have to be so calculative." She looked around and was silent for a moment. Look at how scared they are. There were a few boats around them. They probably thought that Hien's reaction was very interesting. Now that they saw the man's example, they did not dare to come closer. They quickly asked the boatman to row the boat further away, as if they were avoiding the plague. Xiaoju laughed. "You still have the mood to care about others?" Hien looked down at herself. Half of her body was drenched. Xiaoju stood up and walked to the back of the boat. She took a handkerchief and threw it to her. Then, she sat by the small stove where the tea was boiling. "Come here." Hien obeyed. Xiaoju said, "Dry your hair." Hien obediently agreed. She placed her long hair on the stove and used the heat to dry her hair. "Commander-in-Chief, are you hungry?" "You're hungry." Hien touched her stomach. "Very." She had always had an amazing appetite. Xiaoju sighed. She went to the front and said something to the boatman. Not long after, the boatman rowed the boat and arrived at a water market. Although it was called a water market, it was actually a few dozen boats together. There were people selling snacks, hot tea, all kinds of snacks, and even roasted chicken and roasted goose. The smell was very delicious. The boat stopped at the water market. Xiaoju asked He Yin to come to the bow of the boat. Choose what you want. The food on the boat was very different from the food in Shuajing. He Yin was greedy for some, but he could not bear to part with the others. He picked a little of everything. Therefore he carried a big pile of oiled paper bags. Xiaoju was silent for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you a rice bucket? If I can't finish it, I can bring it back to Lin Shuanghe and the others." He Yin smiled and said, "I've already restrained myself." Xiaoju was silent for a moment. She also picked a few things and paid. Then she helped her carry the oiled paper bags onto the boat. He Yin was very happy with the food and drinks. She sat on the ground and looked out of the boat. She happily opened the paper bags to eat and drink. She had a good appetite. After being hungry for a day, she did not care about her image. Xiaoju endured and said, "Pay attention to your manners." He Yin did not care. He still did what he wanted. After reminding her twice, Xiaoju gave up. She placed her hands on the small window of the boat. She suddenly remembered that when she was young, she also took a boat to Jinling with her classmates from the Xianchang school. At that time, there was also Xiaoju. It was her first time on a boat. She was very seasick. She vomited a few times on the boat. She almost died on the boat. Now she did not get seasick. But in the past, the young people all went their separate ways. In the end, it was still Xiaoju who stayed by her side. The world was unpredictable. "There seems to be a water stage over there." He Yin was surprised and said, "Boatman, can you move the boat over there?" The boatman said, "Okay." He rowed the boat to the side of the water stage. The bottom of the stage was propped up by something. There were only some wooden stakes above the water. Then the stage was built on top of the wooden stakes. The surrounding spectators could only sit on the boat and look up. They saw that the performers had painted faces and were singing enthusiastically. The dance of the martial artists was very beautiful. Although they could not understand the words, it was very lively. There was also a boat selling delicious honey water. He Yin ran to the bow of the boat to look. There were many girls buying it. Seeing that He Yin was engrossed in watching, the vendor smiled and explained, "Miss, these are all fresh. Do you want to have a bite after watching the show? We have everything here. Lychee cream, bayberry juice, apricot juice, plum blossom wine, sugar cane juice, wet pear juice, sweet bean soup." He Yin saw that in the small cup, there was a snow-white, cold and red ball on top. He asked, "What is that?" "This is sugar ice cold seed. It's sweet and cold. You definitely won't lose out if you have a bite. Miss, do you want a cup?" He Yin was a little greedy. Just as he was about to say something, Xiaoju asked, "Is this cold?" "It is cold." The vendor replied enthusiastically, "The ice hasn't melted yet. It's very cool." "I don't want this. Change it to something hot," he said. He Yin stared blankly for a moment, but the peddler said enthusiastically, "Then is it sweet bean soup? I just cooked it. It's very warm in your hands." "Oh, did you get wet just now?" The vendor smiled as he scooped a spoonful of sweet bean soup from the small bucket into a bowl and handed it to He Yin. He said, "Then you should drink more to warm your body. Young master is so considerate." He Yin was confused. At this moment, he didn't care about what the vendor said. He only asked Xiaoju, "Don't you want to drink some?" "I don't drink sweet things." He turned and walked into the boat. He Yin asked the vendor, "What's not sweet?" "Perilla juice isn't sweet." He Yin took out a few copper coins from his sleeve. "I want another cup of perilla juice." She held the sweet bean soup in one hand and the perilla juice in the other. She followed Xiaoju into the boat and handed the perilla juice to Xiaoju. "This isn't sweet. I've already asked. Drink it. It's my treat." Xiaoju was speechless. "I gave you the money. It's the thought that counts. How can you be so calculative?" He Yin scooped a spoonful of sweet bean soup for herself. It was sweet and warm. She squinted her eyes. "It's really delicious." Xiaoju said, "You're so easy to feed." "You don't know," He Yin said. "I rarely ate sweet things in the past. But actually I like sweet things very much." She said, "Jiang is so nice. I want to be a Jiang person too." "You can stay here." "How can I do that?" He Yin sighed. There are many other things I need to do. While they were talking, a small boat came from the side. Someone exclaimed in admiration. Ian climbed over to take a look. He saw a craftsman sitting at the bow of the boat. He was kneading dough figures. He was kneading whatever the performers were singing on the stage. The pile of straw was already filled with dough figures. They looked exactly like the young actors in the opera. Their craftsmanship was outstanding. Ian leaned on the bow of the boat and watched the dough change rapidly in the hands of the craftsman. The old man who was kneading the dough figures smiled and asked, "If you like, can you buy one? I can knead a dough figure just like you." "Really? Of course." Ian was a little tempted, but she hesitated. Forget it. Xiaoju was boiling something on the small stove. When she heard this, she looked up and asked, "Why not?" Ian turned around and whispered, "I'm a woman now. I can buy it. But if I go back to the city guard station, I have to dress up as a man. It's not convenient to bring this dough figure with me. It'll be bad if it's used as evidence. Since I'm going to lose it anyway, why should I have it?" Xiaoju stared straight at her. Suddenly, his lips curled into a smile as he lightly said, "You're not tall, but you're quite scheming." He tapped his finger and a string of copper coins flew onto the craftsman's table. "Make one for her." The old man smiled and kept the copper coins. "Okay." Ian hurriedly turned around and walked to Xiaoju. "Why did you buy it? If I buy it, I can't take it with me when I leave Jiang. Why waste money?" "You don't like it." He smiled and said, "If you like it, then buy it. In this world, it's too boring if you don't fight for it because you're afraid of losing it." Seeing that Ian still did not move, he looked at her mockingly, but his tone was very calm. "Lady He, we're in Jiang. You can do whatever you want today. You don't have to worry about it. You are exactly how you were before this. You can tell me what you like or hate. You don't have to wrong yourself, and you don't have to lie to everyone." Ian was speechless. She did not know what to say. After a long while she said, "Can I really do whatever I want?" Xiaoju shrugged. "You can do whatever you want." Ian sat down. The old man who made the dough figure was very skilled. After a short while, he finished making the dough figure. He called out to Ian from the other side. "Lady, your dough figure is ready." Ian thanked him and took the dough figure from him. The dough figure was made very carefully. Even the lace at the corner of the skirt was exactly the same as the one on her body. It looked very beautiful. She was in a daze. After a long while, she raised the dough figure and asked Xiaoju, "Commander-in-Chief, do you think she looks like me?" Xiaoju replied coldly, "She's much better than you." Ian was used to being mocked by him. She was not angry. She only said happily, "I really do look like a girl." She saw Xiaoju taking something out of the jar on top of the stove and putting it in a bowl. Ian went over to take a look. She did not know when Xiaoju had cooked a bowl of noodle soup. The noodles were white and there was a little soy sauce. There were no onions. There was only an egg in the noodle soup and some green vegetables. The aroma of the noodle soup assailed her nose. Ian was stunned. She had been busy looking at the scenery outside and eating. She did not know when Xiaoju had cooked a bowl of noodle soup. She asked, "Commander-in-Chief, are you hungry?" Xiaoju did not say anything. She only pushed the bowl in front of her and handed her a pair of chopsticks. "Eat. For me." Ian took the chopsticks. She was flattered. "Why? I bought a lot of food." "I'm not." Before she could say the word hungry, she heard the man in front of her say lightly, "Isn't today your birthday?" Ian was stunned. After a while she asked, "How do you know?" Even in front of Cui Yuezhi, she said a few days after the spring equinox. "Lady He," Xiaoju said slowly, "do you know that your ability to deceive people is erratic and sometimes full of loopholes?" Ian did not say anything. After a while, she said softly, "So the reason why you are so good to me today is actually because you know that today is my birthday, right?" "Good." Xiaoju raised her eyebrows. "You seem to have a lot of misunderstandings about good. Am I good to you?" "It's not like that." Ian thought to herself. Other than Lu Buwang, she had never met anyone else who was as good to her as Xiaoju. No one remembered her birthday. In the past they called her Hirufei. That was Hirufei's birthday, not hers. But today this bowl of birthday noodles was made by Xiaoju for Hien. She raised her head and smiled at Xiaoju. Commander-in-Chief, you are so good to me. Thank you. The corners of the girl's eyes were curved. She was obviously smiling, but her eyes were a little red because of the steam. Xiaoju was slightly stunned. Just as she was about to say something, Hien had already buried her head in eating noodles. So he did not say anything. The sky was completely dark. The sky was as black as ink, sprinkling down thousands of stars. The river formed a river of stars, pressing down on the boat. The boatmen paddled slowly. Unknowingly, they had already left the most prosperous middle section of the river. There were fewer boats around, and a cool breeze blew. It was pleasing to the eye. A dark green streamer swept across the water, and stopped at the bow of the boat. The boatmen had already stopped paddling. The boat floated quietly on the water. Hien pulled Xiaoju out to take a look. Beside the spring, in the depths of the dense forest, countless bright and dim streamers floated around the water and the forest. It was like a glowing drizzle. Thousands of flying streamers reflected in their eyes. It's so beautiful. Hien sighed. In the past few years, it was not that she had not seen beautiful scenery. It was just that she did not have the mood to appreciate it when she was on the road in the army. Thinking about it, it had been many years since she let go of everything like this. She would never forget such a night for the rest of her life. Hien turned his head and saw Xiaoju lying down at the bow of the boat. Her hands were behind her head as she looked at the fireflies in front of her. She thought for a moment and also lay down beside Xiaoju. She imitated Xiaoju and put her hands behind her head. She looked at the light that could not be extinguished by the night wind. It was as if the stars were right beside her. Today is the happiest birthday I have ever had. Thank you, Commander-in-Chief, she said. Xiaoju did not comment. She said, don't we all have to make a wish on our birthday? Go ahead and finish what you started. Make a wish? Hien said. I don't have any wishes. Praying for blessings from the heavens was probably an act of self-deception. If you want something, you have to fight for it yourself. Why are you so indifferent? If I really have to say something, I hope that there is someone in this world who came for me. It wasn't for Hirufei or General Feihong. It was just for her. It was for her. What kind of wish is that? Xiaoju sneered. I thought you were going to say that you want to be promoted to a noble rank. At the very least, you want to enter the 9 Flags Battalion. Spots of light in the forest shone brightly in the night sky. Perhaps it was because the night wind was too good, and the scenery was too wonderful that she wanted to say more. She said, Commander-in-Chief, have you noticed that ever since I got together with you, I have always been someone else's stand-in? Sometimes it's Cheng Lisu, sometimes it's Wen Yuyan. Next time, I don't know what my identity will be. Xiaoju said, do you feel wronged? Not really. It's just that. She looked into the distance. Sometimes, after being someone's stand-in for so long, it's hard to avoid forgetting who you are. Commander-in-Chief, you have to remember my name. My name is Hien. The girl looked at the sky and smiled. Xiaoju looked at her and saw that her eyes were clear and bright. Amidst the happiness, there seemed to be a layer of dark sadness. The brightness of the past was gone. It was as if there were countless unspeakable sufferings that were finally swallowed down one by one. He turned and looked at the sky. In the wilderness, the stars were like a waterfall. A cool breeze blew past their cheeks. The water surface was dark and unpredictable. It was unknown how many people would have their sweet dreams tonight. How many people would have seen the glimmer in the night sky. The young man curled his lips and said slowly, such a terrible name. I will remember it after hearing it once. Don't worry that I will forget, Lady Hien. Chapter 139. The boat floated on the water, and the fireflies gradually hid in the depths of the forest. The young girl leaned on the young man's shoulder, and unknowingly fell asleep. The boatman stood up from the bow, and was about to speak when Xiaoju shook her head slightly. The boatman understood and did not wake her up. He did not paddle, and let the boat float. Xiaoju just sat there and looked at the water. The water was calm, and occasionally the wind swept past, creating layers of ripples. He turned his head and looked at the young girl sleeping on his shoulder. She was not like ordinary girls who like to be beautiful. She slept without caring about her image. There were traces of tears on her lips, and she even drooled. He turned his head away in disgust and looked at the water in the distance. Not long after, he lowered his head and smiled helplessly. In the end, he did not push her away. Yin rarely had a good night's sleep, and vaguely had a beautiful dream. But as for what the dream was, he forgot when he woke up. When he opened his eyes, he found himself lying on the soft bed on the boat, covered with a thin layer of mattress. She sat up and saw Xiaoju sitting at the bow. She called out, "Young master." He looked back at Yin and said, "Wash up, it's time to go back." Yin was surprised for a moment, and then he found out that they had stayed at the Falling Firefly Spring for an entire night. The surrounding fireflies had all left, and only their boat was left. Yin yawned and used the clean water on the boat to wash up. When he combed his hair, because Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao were not around, he randomly tied his hair into a man's bun. She washed up and came out of the bow, and heard the boatman talking to Xiaoju. "Young master, go directly to the spring. Walk a few steps forward, and there is a relay station. You can hire a carriage at the relay station. Young master and miss can take the carriage back. The canal does not allow fireflies to pass during the day." Xiaoju paid the money to him and walked to the shore. She said to Yin, "Let's go." Yin also thanked the boatman and quickly went to the shore. It was early in the morning, and the wide leaves of the grass and trees were covered with sparkling dew, bringing with it some cold morning dew. Yin yawned again and asked Xiaoju, "Commander-in-Chief, did I fall asleep last night? Why didn't you wake me up? Why did you stay here all night?" Xiaoju sneered. "I wonder who was the one who snored so loudly last night that no one could wake her up." "Are you serious?" Yin was suspicious. "Are you lying to me? I'm not you." As the two of them chatted, they didn't get far before they saw a relay station, just as the boatman had said. There was also a noodle shop next to the relay station. The lady boss was cooking noodles in a big iron pot, and the aroma assailed his nostrils. Yin didn't eat much in the morning, so he was already hungry. He said, "Let's eat something first before taking the carriage." Without waiting for Xiaoju to reply, he waved to the lady boss and said, "2 bowls of noodles and a tray of steamed buns." She had a good appetite, so she pulled Xiaoju to a table outside the straw hut and sat down. The steamed buns that had just come out of the oven were steaming hot. Yin held them in his hands and blew on them to cool them down. Xiaoju wasn't as impatient as her. After the noodles were served, she ate very slowly. Seeing Yan's mouth full of oil, she only felt that it was funny. "Don't look at me and laugh," Yan said. "It's as if I'm embarrassing." This person replied neither quickly nor slowly. "It's embarrassing. Look around. How many people eat as ugly as you?" Yin looked around sneakily. It was still too early, and those who came to eat were probably people who were rushing on their way, or people who were resting here on their way. Sitting beside her was a pair of grandmother and granddaughter. The old woman had white hair and a kind face. The little girl beside her was about 11 or 12 years old. She wore a dirty cloak, and half of her face was buried in it. She lowered her head and ate silently. Both of them were dressed very plainly, probably because they were rushing here, and didn't have time to tidy themselves up. Seeing Yin look over, the old woman was startled. She smiled and asked, "Miss?" "It's nothing." Yin smiled. Xiaoju raised her eyebrows. "Even the little brat eats more elegantly than you." What she said was true. The little girl's clothes were dirty, but the way she ate was very decent and elegant. She didn't look like an ordinary person. Yin asked himself, even when he was Hirufei and Mrs. Su, he couldn't have done better than her. No wonder Xiaoju laughed at him. However, were the people in Jiang all crouching tigers and hidden dragons? Looking at the old woman, he didn't feel that way. She turned her head and smiled at the old woman. "Auntie, is this your granddaughter? She's so pretty." "Yes." The old woman was surprised at first, but then she smiled. Yin looked at the little girl again. The little girl didn't react to her, and only lowered her head to eat. The old woman explained, "Nini is shy with strangers. Miss, please don't mind her." Yin smiled. "Why would I mind? She's just too cute. Are you going to the city?" "No." The old woman said, "There's a funeral at home. We're bringing Nini back to attend the funeral." Yan nodded and said, "My condolences." Then he turned around and ate. As he ate, he felt that something was wrong. He couldn't figure it out, but he felt that he had overlooked something. He looked at Xiaoju again. She had stopped eating and was looking at the grandmother and granddaughter beside Yan. She seemed to be deep in thought. Yan leaned closer to him and whispered, "Commander-in-Chief, why do I feel that something is wrong?" Xiaoju glanced at him and suddenly stood up. Then she walked to the grandmother and granddaughter. Yan's question just now had already made the old woman unhappy. She hurriedly finished eating and was about to leave with the little girl. However, as soon as she stood up, she was blocked by someone. A handsome young man stood in front of her. His posture was straight and his expression was calm. He looked at the little girl under the cloak and said calmly, "Speak, little brat." The old woman pulled the little girl into her arms and said protectively, "Young master, what do you want?" "I didn't know that the kidnappers of Jiang were so bold." Xiaoju raised her eyebrows. "They dare to kidnap people in broad daylight." "Kidnappers?" Yan was stunned. Yes, she felt that something was wrong. It was because there seemed to be a barrier between the little girl and the old woman. They did not look like a grandmother and granddaughter at all. From the beginning to the end, the old woman did not ask anything when the little girl was eating. If they were really an ordinary pair of grandmother and granddaughter, as a grandmother, she would probably ask her granddaughter if it was hot and if it was to her liking. No matter how cold and unsociable a girl was, as an elder, she should be more tolerant and not leave her to fend for herself. She looked kind, but her actions were not kind at all. She did not seem like a grandmother. Instead, she seemed like a kidnapper who was eager to deceive others. "You. What nonsense are you talking about?" The old woman stared at Xiaoju and said, "This is my granddaughter. Don't make false accusations. Whether she is your granddaughter or not, we will know once we ask." Xiaoju said, "Speak, little brat." The little girl did not move. "You." The old woman was about to take the little girl away. In the next moment, the whip in Yan's hand moved and rolled towards the other party's cloak. In an instant, the cloak was lifted up by the whip and fell to the ground, revealing half of the little girl's face. Yan weighed the purple jade whip in his hand. This was the whip that Xiaoju had won for him. Fortunately, he always had it with him. It was quite useful. The little girl under the cloak had a clean and beautiful face. Her eyes were full of tears and her mouth was silent. Her acupoint was sealed. "You don't seem to treat your granddaughter very well." Xiaoju sneered slightly. The old woman saw that the situation was not good and shouted, "Mind your own business." A sharp and high-pitched whistle came from her mouth. In the surrounding post stations, there were people feeding the horses, eating breakfast, washing their faces and resting. Suddenly, a few people pulled out their swords and stabbed towards Yan and Xiaoju. "Assassins," Yan said. He could not hide his surprise. There were so many people they could not be considered kidnappers. Kidnappers were afraid of being discovered, so they had to keep a low profile. If they were discovered, their first reaction would be to run away. This old woman not only did not run away, but also had so many accomplices. It was obvious that she had nothing to fear. She looked at the little girl whose acupoint was sealed, or who was drugged. What was the background of this little girl? Why did they need to use such a formation? When Xiaoju came out, she did not have a sword. Seeing that the group of people were close to her, she used the teacup on the table as a hidden weapon and knocked down the swords that were coming towards her face. Yan threw the whip in his hand to her. "Use this." He picked up an iron rod from the ground. The lady boss of the noodle station was already scared and hid under the table. For a moment, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. When Yan fought with them, he knew that this group of people were not ordinary kidnappers. Otherwise, how could they be so skillful and ruthless? It was obvious that they wanted to silence them. The little girl was still standing in the same place. When the old woman saw that Yan and Xiaoju were being surrounded by other people, she rolled her eyes and directly grabbed the little girl. She jumped onto a horse at the entrance of the post station. She was so agile that she did not look like an old person. With a wave of the whip, the horse galloped straight ahead. "Not good," Yan said. "She wants to run away." He turned his head to look at Xiaoju and saw that Xiaoju was surrounded in the center of the group of people. Hien was a man and was very skillful. For a moment, everyone ignored him. Hien said, "Young master, you delay them. I will chase after her." What the relay station did not lack the least was horses. Hien also flipped onto a horse and chased in the direction that the old woman had fled. The road out of the city was the main road, but the old woman did not take the main road. Instead, she chose a bumpy path. Hien chased after her and thought to himself, the fight just now was very intense, but the little girl did not move at all. It seemed that she was either drugged or had her acupuncture points sealed. Even if they had to delay Xiaoju, they still wanted to take the little girl away. It seemed that the little girl was very important to this group of people. Her horse riding skills were superb, so even if the old woman took advantage of the loophole, she couldn't get rid of Hien, who had been following her the whole way. She became anxious and scolded. "Stinky girl, don't court death. Put her down and I can still spare your life." Hien was not afraid. "But you don't refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit." The old woman snorted and used her whip to whip the horse. Hien saw this and stepped on the horse's back. He slapped the horses but hard. The horse jumped forward and almost caught up with the old woman's horse. Hien's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He used the whip in his hand to wrap around the old woman's horse's head. The distance between the two horses was very close. The horse was frightened and kicked its hooves. Hien took the opportunity to jump off the horse and snatch the little girl from the old woman's hands. The two of them rolled on the ground together. As soon as they landed, Hien realized that the little girl was really drugged. She could only make very slight movements. No wonder when they were in the noodle house, no matter how they talked, she did not respond. Hien only had time to unseal her mute acupoint. Before he could ask what the little girl's name was and where she came from, the old woman sneered. She pulled out a soft sword from her waist and coldly said, "Meddling in other people's business." She thrust her sword towards Hien. Hien pushed the little girl away and faced the attack himself. She was barehanded. She had lost her iron rod in the chaos. She could only rely on her nimble body to avoid the opponent's sword. "Who are you people?" Hien asked while dodging. He was secretly shocked by the old woman's skills. "Why did you take this little girl?" The old woman put on a fake smile and waved her sword towards him. "So much nonsense. Go to hell and ask the king of hell." Hien raised his eyebrows. "You want me to go to hell with this little skill? You are too arrogant." She suddenly turned over from the ground and ducked to avoid the sword above her head. She moved her feet and was already behind the old woman. She punched the old woman's back and took the sword from her hand. "Damn it!" the old woman angrily said. Since the sword was already in her hand, although it was not as good as Qinglang, it was still barely usable. At this moment, there was no one else around. Hien was best at swordsmanship other than arranging troops. In just a moment he forced the old woman to retreat. It seemed that she was about to lose. Hien said, "If you surrender now, you still have a chance to live." "Eyesore," the old woman shouted. Suddenly, she pulled out a silver hairpin from her hair bun. The silver hairpin had some unknown mechanism. It immediately grew 3 inches. It was a dagger. She did not use the dagger to deal with Hien. Instead, she faced Hien's sword and threw the dagger accurately towards the girl on the ground. The girl was already drugged and could not move. She could only watch as the dagger was about to pierce her chest. Hien wanted to withdraw his sword to save her, but it was too late. Bang! A loud sound was heard. Just a little bit more and the dagger would have pierced the girl's heart. Something hit the dagger, and the handle was deflected. In an instant, the dagger lost its ferocious strength and slowly rolled to the side. Hien's sword pierced the old woman's chest at the same time. The old woman widened her eyes as if she could not believe that someone could deflect her dagger. She spat out a mouthful of turbid blood and breathed her last. Someone walked out from the depths of the forest. It was a thin man about 40 years old, but he was very elegant and outstanding. He was dressed in white and his long hair was tied up with white silk. He looked like a swordsman, but also like a zither player. His eyebrows were bright and his long beard did not look sloppy. Instead, it added to the elegance of a Jianghu person. When Hien saw this person, he was stunned. The man in white walked closer and helped the trembling girl up from the ground. Then he looked at Hien. Hien muttered, "Master." He did not look surprised, but he was a little surprised. He? Chapter 140. Hien stayed where he was. For a moment he didn't know what to be shocked about. Should he be shocked that he met Lu Buwang here? Or that Lu Buwang could recognize him at a glance? Lu Buwang unsealed the little girl's acupoints. The little girl coughed a few times, looked at them, and didn't speak. Hien couldn't help but ask Lu Buwang, "Master, how did you recognize me?" Lu Buwang was the only one who had seen Hien's face under the mask, except for a few people from the He family. In the Battle of Mo County back then, all her comrades had died in battle. If Lu Buwang hadn't picked her up from the pile of corpses, Hien wouldn't know where she was now. Lu Buwang knew her identity as a woman, and had seen her face before. But now, her face was no longer the young Mistress Su of the past. He smiled and said, "Your swordsmanship is special, and it's mixed with my swordsmanship. I can see it at a glance. Why? Did you change your appearance?" Hien couldn't explain it clearly in a short time, so he just said vaguely, "It's a long story. We'll talk about it later. But Master, why are you here?" "There are suspicious people in Jiang City. I suspect it's Yudo, so I tracked them all the way here." He looked at the old woman's corpse on the ground. "I heard the sound of fighting here, so I came to take a look. What happened? Do you know this little girl?" Hien shook his head. "No, I didn't. My friend and I passed by here, and were eating in a noodle house. We saw this woman and the little girl acting suspiciously. We thought they were kidnappers, but we didn't expect that there were assassins around. We suspected they weren't simple criminals." While they were talking, the sound of horse hooves came from behind them. They looked back and saw Xiaoju galloping over. She stopped the horse a little closer to them, got off the horse, walked to Hien's side and asked with a frown, "Who are you?" "We're on the same side." Hien hurriedly explained, "This is my master." "Master?" Xiaoju said in disbelief. "What master?" "My skills are already the best among the Liang province guards. Didn't I tell you that I have a master to guide me? This is my master. We haven't seen each other for many years. I'm also surprised to see you here today. If it wasn't for her help just now, this little girl would have died." Lu Buwang looked at Xiaoju and smiled. "I'm Lu Buwang. You are?" "Xiao Huanqing," he said. "Young master, where are those people just now?" Yen asked. Since he couldn't win, he ran away. Xiaoju didn't comment. "What about you? Why are you here to catch up?" "It's not too late to talk about these things later." Yen changed the topic. "These people made such a big fuss just to kidnap a little girl. Isn't it strange? Little girl, what's your name? Where do you live? Whose child are you?" She bent down to look at the child. The little girl was born very well. Although she was still young, it could be seen that she was a beauty. She seemed to be a little frightened as she stared vigilantly at the crowd. She pursed her lips and did not speak. Hien asked her a few times, but she didn't answer. In the end, she just turned her face away. Could he really be a mute? Hien was puzzled. "You're the mute," the little girl replied angrily. "So you can talk. Then why didn't you answer the question I asked you just now?" she asked. The little girl ignored him again. Maybe she just encountered some bad guys and doesn't trust others. "It's okay. She'll be fine after some time," Lu Buwang said with a smile. Hien sighed. For a moment he was helpless, so he looked at Xiaoju. "Young master, why don't we take this child back first and let Lord Chui decide? If she's really a girl from a big family, Lord Chui will definitely know her." Xiaoju nodded. When the little girl heard the words Lord Chui, her eyes moved slightly, but in the next moment, she lowered her head again to hide the strange look in her eyes. Lu Buwang smiled. "In that case, let's part ways here." Hien was stunned. Lu Buwang was always like this. Since Hien knew him, he felt that this person seemed to have no worries, and everything went his way. She had never seen Lu Buwang befriend anyone, nor did she see him have any contact with others. He never seemed to feel lonely, and he didn't feel too sad every time they parted. When Hien said goodbye to him back then, he was still reluctant, but Lu Buwang was very open-minded. He only said, "All good things must come to an end. You have to grow up." They had just met an old friend, but before they could catch up, They had to part ways. Hyan's heart ached, and she grabbed Lu Buwang's sleeve. Master, I'm living in a friend's house now. His house is very big. Why don't you go back with us? I have a lot of things to ask you. Xiao Ju's gaze fell on her fingers that were grabbing Lu Buwang's sleeve, and she raised her eyebrows silently. Lu Buwang smiled and said helplessly, Ehi, why are you still like a child? I haven't seen you for a long time. I thought I would never see you again. Hyan refused to let go. Besides, didn't you just say Yudo? Since it's related to Yudo, we must tell Princess Mengji in Jiang City. Come back with me. I know an official who grew up with Princess Mengji, and they have a very good relationship. It's easier to report this matter. Lu Buwang was slightly stunned. Princess Mengji? Hyan saw that his attitude was different, so she nodded repeatedly. Yes, master, think about it. It's unusual for Yudo to suddenly appear in Jiang. It has always been difficult to travel through Jiang. Not to mention Yudo. Even people from the central plains of Dawei have to go through many twists and turns to come here. But Yudo can hide in Jiang City. What does this mean? In short, there are many suspicious points in this matter. We should go together. Lu Buwang was still a little hesitant. Xiao Ju crossed her arms and looked at the two of them. She smiled lazily and said, Yes, Mr. Lu, why don't you come back with us and discuss it carefully with your good disciple? After a long silence, Lu Buwang said with a smile, Okay, then I'll go back with you. I just hope that I won't cause trouble for you. Hyan breathed a sigh of relief. Although he kept Lu Buwang by his side, he couldn't do anything. But when he met his teacher from his previous life, he really didn't want to part ways without saying a few words. After all, there weren't many people who could remember Hyan. Then let's go back to the post station first and hire a carriage to go back to the Chui mansion. Hyan said to Xiao Ju, and then sighed again. I didn't go back last night. I don't know if I made Lord Chui and the others anxious. Lu Buwang glanced at Xiao Ju and Hyan, as if he was deep in thought. The little girl saved from the old woman had been fed medicine. Her body was soft and she couldn't even walk. Every step she took, she would fall down. Hyan thought for a while and squatted down in front of her, saying, Little girl, come up. Xiao Ju asked, What are you doing? She can't walk, so I'll carry her to the post station. Hyan answered, Otherwise this won't work. She really didn't know that her period had come. Xiao Ju was silent for a moment and said, I'll carry her. Ha! Hyan was stunned. The little girl was dissatisfied and criticized. I'm a woman and you're a man. How can you carry me? I want her to carry me. Little brat, Xiao Ju said indifferently. If you say one more word, I'll leave you here. The rude and unreasonable little brat was inferior to the unreasonable commander-in-chief, so he didn't dare to say anything more. He was afraid that Xiao Ju would leave him alone. Hyan watched as Xiao Ju carried the little girl and walked all the way back to the post station. When they arrived at the post station, they were no longer in the mood to continue eating breakfast. They only hired a carriage and asked the coachman to go back to the Chui mansion. Sitting in the carriage swayed forward. Hyan and Xiao Ju sat on one side, while the little girl and Lu Buwang sat on the other side. They were all silent. Xiao Ju suddenly said, Mr. Lu is Hyan's master? Lu Buwang smiled and said, Yes. Then Mr. Lu's skills must be very outstanding. He doesn't deserve the word outstanding. Xiao Ju smiled softly. Why did you think of accepting Hyan as your disciple? After all, this person. He paused and said with a slightly mocking tone. Except for being short and stupid, he doesn't seem to have any other talent. At this time, Hyan didn't care if Xiao Ju said that he was short and stupid. He was afraid that Lu Buwang would let it slip, so he spoke first and said nonsense. Who said that? When I was in Shuo capital, I just happened to travel. Who knew that I happened to meet my master who accepted me as his disciple? It was fate. Among thousands of people, my master saw that I was talented and smart at a glance. He knew that I would be successful in the future, so he accepted me as his disciple and taught me martial arts. It's just that my master is like a wild crane. He has long been out of the world. After teaching me for 3 years, he went to travel around the world. This is the first time I met him after we parted. She consciously explained the ins and outs of all this clearly. She only hoped that Xiao Ju wouldn't ask further. Xiao Ju looked at Lu Buwang and asked, "Is that so?" Lu Buwang glanced at He Yan and said, "Yes." "I see." The young man nodded and didn't say anything else. The stone in He Yan's heart fell to the ground. At this moment, she heard Lu Buwang looking at her and asking doubtfully, "Ahi, what is your relationship with young Master Qiao?" Oh, this question was very difficult to answer. Now she was Wen Yiyan, and Xiao Ju was Qiao Huanqing. In terms of relationship, they were naturally husband and wife. But Lu Buwang knew her true identity. Now there was a little girl with an unknown identity. If this little girl knew Cui Yuezhi, she couldn't let it slip. Then she looked at Xiao Ju, who was leaning against the carriage seat and looking at her with a faint smile, waiting to hear her answer. "Young Master Qiao is my husband." He Yan had no choice but to bite the bullet and spit out a sentence with difficulty. Lu Buwang was a little surprised. "He, I haven't seen you for a few years. You're already married?" Yes. He Yan forced a smile. "That's good." Lu Buwang nodded slightly. "With someone accompanying you, I can rest assured." He Yan. After lying so many times, He Yan understood for the first time what it meant to shoot oneself in the foot with sure too. It was right now. When they returned to the Cui mansion, only a few concubines were there. Concubine Wei was relieved when she saw them return safely. She stroked her chest and said, "Last night, young Master Huanqing sent a message saying that he would return this morning. The kitchen made breakfast, but I didn't see him. I was a little worried that something had happened. Now I can finally rest assured." Her gaze fell on the little girl and Lu Buwang behind her, and she asked doubtfully, "These two are?" "They are my old friends. I didn't expect them to come to Jiang." He Yan smiled and said, "Where's uncle?" "Lord went to the prince's mansion early in the morning. Her Highness the Princess summoned him. I don't know when he will return." He Yan and Xiao Ju looked at each other. Cui Yuezhi was not there, so they had to settle the little girl down first. "Have Miss Yu Yan and young Master Huanqing eaten breakfast? I'll ask the kitchen to heat it up again." "My husband and I have already eaten," He Yan said with a smile. "But this little sister and sir haven't eaten yet. Please send it to my room when it's ready. In addition, get some hot water. The little sister wants to take a bath and dress up." Concubine Wei quickly agreed. He Yan took the little girl back to his room and handed her to Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao, instructing them to bathe the little girl. As soon as he finished instructing, Lin Shuanghe's voice came from the other end. "It's been a night and you haven't returned. You're finally back. How is it? Are the fireflies beautiful? I should have gone with you last night. Thinking about it, I feel a little regretful that I didn't see such a beautiful scenery. It's really a pity." As soon as he stepped into the inner room, he saw Lu Buwang standing in the room. He was stunned and asked doubtfully, "He's my master," He Yan said. "His surname is Lu, and his name is Buwang." "Hello, Master Lu." Lin Shuanghe hurriedly cupped his fists and bowed. Then he asked curiously, "Why is Master Lu here? Could it be that you told this sir in advance before coming to Jiang?" Her words were so hurtful that those who didn't know would think that she was colluding with outsiders. He Yan hurriedly said, No, absolutely not. Young master, you've misunderstood," Lu Buwang said with a smile. "I'm originally from Jiang. I met my disciple in the Central Plains before. We haven't seen each other for many years. I didn't expect to meet you when my disciple came to Jiang this time." "I see." Lin Shuanghe also smiled. "Sir, you're obviously not an ordinary person to be able to teach such an outstanding disciple." Lu Buwang smiled but didn't say anything. He Yan inexplicably felt a little embarrassed, so he said, "Young master, Brother Lin, can you go to the next room first? I haven't seen my master for many years, and I have a lot to say." "Let's listen together," Lin Shuanghe said with a smile. "I also want to know what sister he was like in the past." Xiao Ju glanced at him and walked out by herself saying, "Let's go." "Don't you want to listen?" Lin Shuanghe was still a little unwilling. "If you want to listen to it yourself." Seeing that Xiao Ju had already gone out, Lin Shuanghe could only put away his fan regretfully and said to He Yan, "Sister, I'll go out first. You and Master Lu can catch up." After saying that, He also went out and closed the door. Only Hien and Lu Buwang were left in the room. Hien hurriedly stepped forward and helped to remove the guqin from Lu Buwang's back. She put it on the table and moved a chair over, saying, "Master, sit down first." Then she poured a cup of tea for Lu Buwang. Lu Buwang just smiled and watched her do all this. In the end, he sat down at the table and stopped Hien from doing anything, saying, "Enough, he sit down." The familiar he almost made Hien's eyes turn red. She also sat down at the table and said, "Master." In an instant, she felt like she had returned to the days when she and Lu Buwang lived deep in the mountains many years ago. In the Battle of Mo County, Hien was buried in a pile of corpses. The desert was extremely dry, and she was going to die. Who knew that it would rain at night, and she managed to survive that night. The next day, a passerby passed by and saw the corpses all over the ground. He dug a long pit and buried the corpses of the soldiers who died in the battle one by one. He also found Hien, who was hiding in the pile of corpses, and was on the verge of death. The passerby took Hien back and healed Hien. When Hien woke up, she found that the mask on her face was gone. She got up from the bed and found that she was living in a thatched hut. When she walked out of the hut, she saw someone sweeping the yard. It was a middle-aged man with an extraordinary temperament. He was dressed in white and had a white belt. He was thin and his clothes fluttered in the wind, as if he was an otherworldly man. Hien was a little vigilant and asked, "Who are you?" The man in white stopped what he was doing and turned around to see her. He smiled and didn't answer her question. Instead, he asked, "Girl, since you are a girl, why did you join the army?" Hien was shocked and suddenly realized that her identity had been exposed. Later, she learned that the man in white who saved her was called Lu Buwang. He was a lay practitioner who wandered around. Every once in a while he would go to a place. Now he lived on a barren mountain near Mo County, and earned money from the medicinal herbs he grew. Hien asked him at that time, "When you saved me, didn't you encounter any Western Chang people on the way?" There were scattered soldiers of Western Chang wandering around Mo County. If someone was found to have saved the soldiers of Dawei, this person would definitely suffer. Lu Buwang pointed to the sword at his waist. "I have a sword. I'm not afraid." At first, she thought that Lu Buwang was talking nonsense. Later, when she saw a Western Chang man die under Lu Buwang's sword, she realized that Lu Buwang was telling the truth. Lu Buwang was a real otherworldly master. Hien had never seen such an omnipotent person. He used swords, sabers, whips, spears, and halberds. He also knew Chimanduanjia and divination. In her stupid previous life, she finally did a smart thing, which was to ask Lu Buwang to be her teacher. Lu Buwang refused. But Lu Buwang didn't expect Hien to be such a persistent person. Whenever she was free, except for eating, she spent most of her time begging Lu Buwang to accept her as his disciple. Perhaps Lu Buwang had never met such a shameless person. In the end, he had no choice but to ask her, "What's the use of learning these things if you become my disciple? If I learn these things, when I enter the military camp again, if I encounter Western Chang people like before, I won't be completely wiped out. Even if there is one more person, I can protect him, just like how you protect me. You still want to enter the military camp?" Lu Buwang was slightly surprised. Hien was puzzled. "Of course. Do you know that you are a woman and your identity is special? Now that your team has been wiped out, you can take this opportunity to go home, and no one will find out your identity. The original Hirufei is already dead." Hien was silent for a while, and then she raised her head. "I never thought of being a deserter." This sentence probably moved Lu Buwang. Later, Lu Buwang drank Hien's tea and began to teach her step by step. But Hien was a girl after all, and some things were not suitable for her, so Lu Buwang tried his best to teach her something suitable. But even if she only learned a little from Lu Buwang, it was enough for Hien to gain a lot. What Lu Buwang taught Hien the most was Chimanduanjia. The combination of Chimanduanjia and the art of war was enough to create a female general who could use troops like a god and set up formations exquisitely. So what if there were brave generals with extraordinary strength? So what if the Western Chang people were extremely strong, ferocious and valiant? War was never just about strength. I didn't expect that master could still recognize me at a glance even though I'm not in my original appearance. Hien lowered her head and smiled. How did you recognize me? Your swordsmanship, Lu Buwang laughed, is unique in the world. When Hien first took Lu Buwang as her master, she wanted to show Lu Buwang her original skills. After Lu Buwang saw it, he was silent for a long time. He probably thought that as a woman, since she had the confidence to enter the military camp, she must have extraordinary skills. But after seeing Hien's swords, bows and horses, Lu Buwang began to doubt whether his decision was wrong. He really didn't know where Hien's confidence came from. But he had already drunk the tea, and he had to finish teaching the disciple he accepted. Lu Buwang was also very helpless. He had never accepted a disciple before, but when he did, he accepted the one with the worst aptitude. It was really a blessing from the heavens. Fortunately, Hien was not completely without merit. This girl was not good at anything except swordsmanship. Her foundation was so good that it was a little surprising. Lu Buwang asked Hien at that time, "Who taught you swordsmanship? It's not bad." Hearing this, Hien said proudly, "There's an expert helping me in secret. I don't know who he is, but I guess he's a teacher from our school. He thinks that my aptitude is good, so he taught me after class." What she said was true. When Hien entered school as a teenager, her martial arts were a mess. Even though she practiced swordsmanship in the courtyard every night, she still didn't make much progress. When she was about to give up, one day, she suddenly found a piece of paper on the table in her room. There was a small figure drawn on the paper, which was the weakness and mistakes of her swordsmanship when she practiced swordsmanship after class. It also wrote how to overcome these problems, and the instructions were very detailed. Hien tried to practice for a few days, and she really made some progress. She was very surprised. Then she found that there would be such a piece of paper on the table in her room every 10 days. It adjusted and guided her as she made progress. She didn't know who the person was, but she guessed that it should be a kind teacher in the school. His swordsmanship was better than hers, and he could see her shortcomings at a glance, so he gave her pointers. But Hien didn't know who the teacher was. She once tried to hide in the room and wait for the person to deliver the letter, so that she could catch him red-handed. But the person didn't show up that day, so Hien knew that the expert didn't want to show up. But in the end, he was curious and grateful. Therefore, he wrote a note and placed it on the table before returning to the residence. The note said, "In 3 days I will return to the school. See you in the bamboo forest in the backyard at the Z hour. Thank the benefactor in person. Please be sure to come." And then? Lu Buwang asked, "Do you know who the person is?" Hien was silent for a moment, and shook her head gently. As soon as she returned home, she had a big quarrel with He Yuanxing and his brother, and was punished to kneel in the ancestral hall. Less than 3 days later, she left home at night and joined the army alone, taking a completely different path. I missed the appointment. She didn't see that person.